Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
The Durham Public Schools Board of Education work session is now in session. At this time, we wish to extend a warm welcome to everyone who is joining us this evening. The purpose of this meeting is to inform our parents, staff, and constituents about the work aligned with our mission to embrace, educate, and empower every student to innovate, serve, and lead. The interpreters for tonight are Karen Reyes and Yvette Perez. Thank you for taking the time to join us. I'm going to wait for folks to come on in the room so we can move into our moment of silence. But I want to colleagues, I'm going to ask for us to move into the moment of silence. As we go into this moment of silence, let's continue to think about how schools, campuses are under attack, both from some of our federal government, but also from gun violence with another university shooting at Old Dominion today. So let's hold them in comfort as we have a moment of silence. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is agenda review and approval.
Madam Chair, I'd like us to consider adding a proclamation on kids over corporations that you drafted. I'm looking for it in my document, sorry. I know it has a better name. And maybe consider adding that at item 4C.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Byers, seconded by Ms. Carter Otten to add a resolution in support of kids over corporations as item 4C to our agenda. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, use the same sign. It passes unanimously, which is 5-0 right now. Two of our colleagues are running behind and will join us momentarily. And is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Harold Goff, seconded by Chair Umstead to approve the agenda as amended. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It passes unanimously 5-0. Thank you. Next item on our agenda are the Board of Education meeting minutes from February 9th, 2026.
Move approval of the Board of Education minutes from February 9th, 2026.
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Harold Goff, seconded by Ms. Byer to approve the agendas, the minutes from February 9th, 2026. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed use the same sign. Again, it passes unanimously 5-0. Thank you so much. The next item on our agenda is general public comment. I'll do a quick review of the rules as we go into public comment. First, please state your name, and if speaking for an organization, please state your name and the name of the organization. Second, speakers are asked to present their comments in 1 minute. When the yellow light comes on, you have 30 seconds left to start winding up your remarks. When the red light comes on, it will beep, which indicates your time is up. Complaints about named staff, students, or parents should not be voiced in open session. However, we are very interested in hearing your concerns with regard to public education, safety of students, or the operation of the school system. Finally, the board members will listen carefully and consider the comments, but we do not engage with the discussion with the speakers. So our first speaker tonight is Jenny Jones Coldren.
As a former DPS teacher and parent of children with exceptional needs who has been following this budget process closely, I know you all have a lot of really hard decisions ahead of you over the next couple months. And I wanted to remind you all that our children are watching. They're paying attention to these conversations and they're remembering them when they're in their too hot or too cold classroom. They're thinking about these decisions when they have a string of subs for their math class, and they can feel the weight of your choices when their Chromebook isn't working, but they're still expected to keep up with their classwork. These are hard decisions without clear answers, and I want to make sure that as we fight for the things we think are most important in our schools, we don't cannibalize each other in the process. And the only reason we're trying to figure out how to make these very difficult trade-offs is because two men in Raleigh care more about corporate tax cuts than they do our children. So let's stop arguing about how to divide this pie and fight for a bigger pie.
Thank you. Ms. Vanessa Safey. And Patricia Russick is next. I apologize if I mispronounce anybody's name.
My name is Vanessa Safi. I'm a DPS parent. I've thought about a lot of what I was going to say tonight, or even if I should say anything. Nobody seems to be listening to each other anymore. Ultimately, I come before you all today and really before my fellow parents in DPS to ask everyone to take a beat and listen to yourselves. It's clear after watching the joint budget presentation earlier this week that we are all reasonable people who have become accustomed to unreasonable outcomes. It's unconscionable that you are being asked to decide between which harm is less harmful to our children in this room because those in rooms in Raleigh have abandoned their responsibility. We're losing sight of our futures here. The futures who sit in DPS classrooms, some with no teachers and some with no books. How do we continue as if this is okay? We should all be on the same side, the side of doing what the children need us to do. Parenting through these unprecedented times.
Feel free to email us the rest of your comments.
I'm Patricia Russick, and I teach at Little River. Mold and air quality issues remain at Little River. Experts were called, reports were written. Wallpaper remains. Dirty, stained carpet remains. Stanky air remains. Our children, teachers, and staff breathe every day in spaces that are still not clean. Where's the action? Symptoms persist. Rashes, coughs, headaches, reminders that health cannot wait. The recommendations, we were clear. Remove the wallpaper that hides the mold. Remove the carpet that is visibly stained. Clean air should not be a privilege. Every day the wallpaper remains. Every day the carpet stays. Is another day our children breathe what they should not. Every day without their removal is another day too long. What's the plan? Waiting is not the remedy.
Allison Stackpole, Francisco Doles.
Hi, I'm Allison Stackpole, and I cede my time to Doles.
Hello, my name is Coach Doles. I'm the physical education teacher at Pearsontown Elementary. I'm also a very proud DAE member. I'm here to speak in support of the 12% raise for classified staff and to ask for a multi-year plan for $25 per hour that includes addressing pay compression. I also like to address extra duty pay. I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of elementary school specialists, music, art, dance, physical education, foreign language teachers, media coordinators, STEM teachers, and others. As specialists, we are very often asked to take on extra duties without extra pay. Duties that include, but are not limited to, coaching after-school sports, which require many hours per week, including some weekend hours as well, and organizing special events like Field Day, Hispanic Heritage Night, choir and dance performances, art shows, science Olympiads, Battle of the Books, and others. All of these duties require many hours of planning and coordinating with volunteers that more often than not take place after our normal working hours, taking away precious times from our home lives. This causes undue stress with our families. As dedicated educators, we find ourselves in a difficult position when asked to take on these duties. Do we say no and risk being labeled as a non-team player and possible retaliation? Or do we say yes and agree to countless hours of non-compensated labor in order to foster our students' interests? The answer should be simple. If we agree to take extra duties, then we should be compensated. Another extra duty that is often thrown at specialists is accommodating for larger than normal class sizes. When one of our colleagues is forced to be absent, these situations happen more often than people realize and are usually at the very last minute. Last minute split classes cause major disruptions and negative outcomes for student learning during specials. For example, lack of equipment, lack of materials, or lack of instruments. Needless to say that behavioral problems also occur during these times due to cramped learning spaces, a sudden change in student dynamics, and a change in teacher-student ratio. Having a split class is most definitely an extra duty that we are forced to into as special.
Thank you. Please feel free to send to the board via email. Anna Benfield, Tara Trahey. Sarah Anna Benfield. Okay, we'll circle back if they show. Tara Trahey.
Hi, my name is Terry Trahey, and I cede my time to Vicky McCain.
Vicky McCain, Leah Earlbaum.
Yes, my name is Vicky McCain, and I'm a worker custodian at DPS for 24 years. I'm a proud DAE member. I'm here today to speak in the support of 12% of the classified workers and to keep fighting for more. I am also here to address extra duty pay. As many of you know, that the changes of the health from the state, we are being asked to pay more than enough for medical care. My copay has doubled, and my monthly medical expense has increased by about 200 to 300. I'm a diabetic, and high blood pressure and insulin is expensive. I need my medication in order to function. If I don't have my medication, I'm working without breaks, and my sugar drops that leads to complications. This is not just me, and many of my coworkers are doing work more than one person, because if somebody out or leaves, then they have no subs now, and we do the work of 2 or 3 workers. We's doing my floor person, I have to move to take care of the classrooms. And because of care, I always make sure the work still get done. I do 2 or 3 jobs sometime, and we, and the money should be budget from the people who are out, and it should be amount of the time. The money should be, the other issue is that when we have extra work outside of the workplace, sometimes it has like 9 months before we get our extra pay. And thank you.
Leah Earlbaum. Jennifer Miskey.
Hi, hello. I guess Leah wasn't here. She was going to cede her time. But my name is Jennifer Miskey, and I teach 8th grade language arts, and I'm also a proud DA member. I work at Shepherd Middle School. I'm here tonight to talk on behalf of our janitor custodian, Mr. Harris. He's our daytime and full custodian at Shepherd. He was supposed to speak here tonight, but he could not make it because 2 of the part-time custodians are out this week. In the past month, our part-time custodians have suffered from a loss in the family, COVID, and one had surgery. All these things are unfortunate life events that could happen to any employee. The problem, though, is that the jobs are performed daily by 3 people are then assigned to Mr. Harris. Today, Mr. Harris has to complete all his daily routine work that needs to be done around the school, and then he has to take up the job of the night custodian to set the school back to set after the students and staff have left the building. He said that he is encouraged to get as much as he can done during his regular hours, which could mean doing things in double time at 6 a.m. However, of course, Mr. Harris cannot get everything done before his shift ends, so he does end up working extra hours.
Thank you. Feel free to email us the rest of your comments. Jackson Webb. Amanda Castillo.
Hi there. My name is Jackson Webb. I am a first-year teacher at Southern High School. I'm fortunately a member of the Duke Teach House program. And this last Tuesday, I was fortunate, as well as some of the other members of this board, to see Superintendent Mo Green speak. And Superintendent Green spoke about reverence for teachers, a very specific language in his strategic plan for this year. Um, the last 5 days at my school, in my classroom, it has not fallen below 80 degrees between 10 o'clock and 4 o'clock. An EC teacher at my school had her room come in at 85 degrees for the last 3 days. An EC teacher. So I'm very curious, is this what reverence for teachers looks like? Thank you.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Amanda Castizo y cedo mi tiempo a mi compañera.
Hi, my name is Luna Gomez, and I cede the rest of my time to my mom, Rosana Salcedo.
Okay, Rosanna Salcedo and Juana Hernandez.
I was expecting the interpreter to be here, but
We can have an interpreter come in if you just hold tight.
buenas noches, miembros de la Junta Escolar, Dr. Luis. Mi nombre es Rosana Salcedo y soy madre de dos estudiantes de nuestras escuelas Carrington y Riverside.
Good evening, school board members, Dr. Lewis. My name is Rosana Salcedo, and I am the mother of two students at our schools, Carrington and Riverside.
Durante mucho tiempo, cuando asistimos o escuchamos en línea estas reuniones de la Junta Escolar como comunidad latina, terminamos frustrados por los problemas con la interpretación.
For a long time, when we attended or listened online to these school board meetings as a Latino community, we ended up frustrated by the problems with interpretation.
Aunque la comunidad ha presentado quejas y posibles soluciones directamente con los intérpretes, el superintendente y miembros de la Junta, no hemos visto cambios, lo cual sugiere una falta de voluntad institucional para abordar la vital importancia del acceso lingüístico para que nuestra comunidad pueda aportar más a las escuelas públicas.
Although the community has submitted complaints and possible solutions directly to interpreters and the superintendent and the board members, we have not seen consistent changes, suggesting an institutional unwillingness to address the vital importance of language access so that our community can contribute more to our public schools.
Algunos de los problemas específicos son equipo de interpretación muy viejo que muchas veces no funciona. Aparente falta de revisión completa del equipo antes de cada reunión con baterías agotadas o audífonos que no sirven.
Some of the specific problems are very old interpretation equipment that often does not work, apparent lack of thorough equipment checks before each meeting with dead batteries or malfunctioning headphones.
Intérpretes instalados en un salón lejos de la sala de reuniones para la transmisión en español por Internet, que no pueden observar si llegan hispanohablantes a la reunión, repartir equipos, solucionar problemas técnicos o acompañarnos con rapidez si deseamos hablar públicamente en la reunión.
Interpreters located in a room far from the meeting room for Spanish internet transmission, who cannot see if Spanish speakers arrive at the meeting, distribute equipment, solve technical problems, or accompany us quickly if we wish to speak publicly at the meeting.
Rezago del mensaje interpretado porque ha pasado primero por transmisión por Internet, lo cual genera mucha confusión porque las palabras interpretadas llegan tan tarde que nos hace casi imposible seguir los procedimientos de la reunión.
Delay in the interpreted message because it has first been transmitted via the internet, which causes a lot of confusion because the interpreted words arrive so late that it is almost impossible for us to follow the meeting proceeding.
Rapidez en los procedimientos de las reuniones que no dejan que los intérpretes transmitan un mensaje claro y acertado.
The speed of the meeting procedures prevents interpreters from conveying a clear and accurate message.
Y por falta de contratos para trabajar horas extras, no hay garantía de que la interpretación será proporcionada por un equipo de dos, lo que implica una calidad inferior de interpretación.
Due to a lack of contracts for overtime work, there is no guarantee interpretation will be provided by the team of two, which means lower quality interpretation.
Cada uno de los problemas anteriores tiene una solución. Una buena implementación de estas prácticas puede eliminar varios problemas a la vez. Todas nuestras recomendaciones están en este documento que les vamos a entregar. Gracias por darle la debida atención a esta recomendación.
Each of the above problems has a solution. Proper implementations of these practices can eliminate several problems at once. All of our recommendations are in this document that we are going to give you. Thank you for giving this recommendation and your attention.
Thank you. Juana Hernandez or Hernandez. I'm sorry, I can't read the handwriting on number 17. Leighton, maybe? Lizeth?
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Juana Hernández.
Good evening. My name is Juana Hernandez.
Soy mamá de un estudiante de la Shepherd Middle School y tuve un incidente con mi hija. En esa escuela hablé con el director y al parecer todo lo tomó, echó culpa a mi hija. Y yo hablé con mi hija, hice una junta con él y al parecer él tomó todo el lado contrario de mi hija. Y quiero saber con quién puedo dirigirme para hacer un complaint.
My daughter is a student at Shepherd. She had an incident. I came into the principal's office and talked about what happened. She blamed everything completely on my daughter, and I would like to know who I can go to directly to make a complaint.
Gracias, es todo.
That is it. Thank you.
Thank you. A deputy's coming out to talk, the deputy superintendent's coming out to talk with you and collect some more information about that. Is there Elizabeth?
My daughter, I don't know the words for that.
Okay, thank you. Heidi Hetland? And Amber Joyner?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Heidi Jo Hetland, physical therapist, DAE member. I want to say thank you to the board for your relentless work on this budget, which is no easy task. Mr. Teeter, thank you for the time and the work you've put in, especially looking at the therapist salary so we can be more competitive and keep our teams fully staffed. I want to say thank you especially to those rotating off of the board for all you've done for us and worked for us since January 2024 with the pay issues. You've all heard lots of hard things from people tonight, and it's just the tip of the iceberg of what staff across the board are encountering, whether it's buildings, extra duty, salaries, and now you have a hard job to do, and I don't envy that of any of you because all of these needs are super important, but I do want to just say thank you again, and please consider the staff and your respect and gratitude for all of them when you're making your decisions. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amber Joyner. I'm ceding my time to Christy Clem.
Hey, Christy Clem, Ananda Ghosh, and Valerie Lewis.
Hello, Christy Clem, physical therapist, member of DAE. Thank you again for the opportunity to do public comment and the thought that's gone into the budget proposal. Greatly appreciate occupational therapy assistants being added in this second draft. They are the IEP treatment specialist. They're some of the best therapists that I've worked with, so thank you for considering them. Also appreciate the proposal for classified pay in general to get it to over 19. I think that's very important and a step in the right direction. From a technology perspective, I'm not in classrooms all day long anymore, but what I do hear folks saying is they would be super happy with the plain old whiteboard and the standard projector on the screen. I know myself, when I go in and out of places, I'd be happy with HDMI cord. I now carry 2 of those in my backpack on a regular basis just to make sure that that's there. So please consider that. From a OTPT perspective, vacancies are still a real thing. It's going to be tough decisions this summer and into the fall when decisions are being made, but we're 2.5 short out of 8 people right now. And it's not about any one person, but to give you perspective, IEP note or IEPs that I've been preparing the last 3 evenings and writing therapy notes, I've spent 19 hours once I've had dinner and then sit down at home and to start working again. Not on extra fluff things, but 19 hours the last 3 nights in federally mandated IEP paperwork that has to be done. It's not sustainable. I'm sure my month-long cough has to do with stress and fatigue of the everydays. But thank you for your consideration.
Hey, I'm Ananda Ghosh. I'm a DAE member and a teacher at Githens. I'm also an advocate for technology in the classroom. I have to agree that in education, technology is infrastructure, but we see the line item to replace outdated BrightLink panels, and we're wondering, DAE is wondering if this is an urgent priority for this year's budget when there are more urgent needs. Learning that old projectors will be replaced with the smart board screens that were brought to STAC meeting past week, there's concern. Teachers don't want this. We don't use interactive features. The survey that asked us about projection and interactive features combined those questions. We use projection. We don't use interactive features. That's what we found speaking to our over 2,500 employees in DPS this year about their priorities. So we want to use those priorities on extra duty.
Hi, I'm Valerie Lewis. I'm a Durham resident. I watched the recent joint meeting between the county commissioners and the school board, and I'm here to strongly support a proposed budget that raises the minimum pay for DPS to match the county. I found the county's presentation troubling. It relied a lot on alarmist headlines and imagery not specific to Durham, along with speculation that was sometimes presented as fact and not deeply rooted in data, as well as comments that felt dismissive of our school's real needs. I, here with many of you, believe it's past time for our educators and pay parity between DPS and the county, and it's an entirely appropriate request for DPS to ask that. Many of us in the community will stand alongside you. A deep thank you to all of you in the administration and board who advocated at that meeting, including for other basic priorities. Despite many difficulties coming off of the last month or two in DPS, I deeply appreciate the work and believe we can all stand together in this request.
Thank you all. That now concludes public comment. Anna Benfield? Is that who we are? Okay.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. My name is Anna Benfield, and I'm a Durham Public Schools occupational therapist, DPS parent, and DAA member leader. And on a personal level, I'm really excited for when I go back to be an occupational therapist. I really hope I have more colleagues than my colleagues that had to hold the team together without me this year. And I'm really thrilled about the addition of occupational therapy assistants who are such important members of our team being added. So I would, alongside other comments that you've heard from today, just continue to stand in support of a living wage for classified staff, the 1922, extra duty pay, and the language justice proposal that was brought here tonight by parents and supported by Alianza, Durham for All, DAE, and Public School Strong. So thank you.
Thank you. Leah Earlbaum?
Hi, my name is Leah Earlbaum. I am an ESL teacher at Southern High School and a DAE member. I'm also here to support the language justice proposal brought by parents tonight, supported by Alianza, Durham for All, DAE, and other parents, and Public School Strong. I'm here to finish the comments by Jen Miskey relating to the custodian at Shepherd, who is taking on the work of 3 people. I'll pick up right where she left off. Mr. Harris cannot get everything done before his shift ends, so he does end up working extra hours. While Mr. Harris does receive thanks for the administrators and staff, he does not receive extra pay in his paycheck for the overtime. He is also losing time with his family, and it puts a burden on his routine because he faithfully takes care of his father with dementia, and when overtime happens, he has to make other arrangements. Mr. Harris is told that extra hours can be considered comp time and that he can use those overtime hours at a different date if he needs to be off of work for a doctor's appointment or attend to other personal matters. But when he tries to use those hours, there's pushback.
Thank you. Again, if that comment's not finished, please feel free to email it to the board. All right, colleagues. Thank you all for your public comments. Appreciate it. The next item on our agenda is our consent agenda.
Move approval of the consent agenda, items A through J.
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Byers, seconded by Ms. Harold Goff to approve the consent agenda, items A through J. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, use the same sign. It passes unanimously. We're now at 6-0. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Tabb. And the next item on our agenda is the policy committee update. We have one for information only, and then we have the revision to policy 5120, relationship with law enforcement. Oh, I do apologize. Mr. Tabb has joined us, and we have our student from the Superintendent's Advisory Council joining us today. Got a little piece of paper. Oh, thank you. Kwame Hester from J.D. Clement Early College High School has joined us on his spring break. Thank you for being here.
Thank you guys for having me.
He is a sophomore and sophomore class president. He's a co-section leader of the baritone section in Hillside High School's marching band, the Immortal Sting. I would get in trouble if I got that wrong. He's vice president of Theta Phi Psi Fraternity Incorporated. It maintains the AB honor roll and has a 3.8 GPA. Thank you, Kwame.
Yes. Thank you guys for having me.
Of course. Did you have anything else you wanted to share right now?
Not specifically, but I'm just, really appreciative to be here and to be able to observe all the comments from the public. And I look forward to, seeing what else is on the agenda and learning more about the school system.
Awesome. Thank you. So now we'll move to the revision of policy 5120, which is 3B, relationship with law enforcement. Dr. Pittman?
Yes, good evening, Chair Rogers and members of the board, Dr. Lewis. The revisions to policy 5120, the relationship with law enforcement, if you'll remember, were brought to the board on February 26th. For first reading, however, at that meeting, we were directed to also add some additional revisions. So in your agenda packet, you will see those track changes versions. The revision process of the policy committee has been quite extensive and has included consideration of community feedback as well as input from the superintendent's principal and student advisory council, cabinet, the sheriff's office, and legal counsel. So as a result of this work, the policy in your packet again is track changes, and it has major highlights that include being reorganized for clarity and including section headers. Several new sections have been included, such as the guidance related to visits by federal law enforcement, resources for students, and training. And so at this time, I'll turn it back to the board for discussion of the track changes and the presentation of the policy. I think we'll be reviewing the policy itself on the projections so that we can navigate whatever the board would like to call attention to.
Colleagues, where would you like to start? Ms. Carter-Otten.
I just wanted to take a minute to, as a reminder of the timeline on this. And so the hope is that this evening, the board and the policy committee can receive policy committee can receive feedback from the rest of the board. We can have a conversation about anything that folks really like, any concerns that folks might have. And then the policy committee intends to continue discussing this at our next meeting, which is on March 19th. And as though Dr. Pittman said, we have been discussing this for 3 meetings already, and that was after the revisions that were made in December. So there's been robust discussion, lots of work, as you can see by the track changes. These have been, Dr. Lewis was present for the last 2 meetings, and Dr. Pittman, of course, as she's our liaison now, and our attorney representative, Mr. Weber, has been there working with us on these changes. So I'm feeling really good about where it is. That's not to say that it couldn't use some more work, but very curious to hear from my colleagues tonight to hear what y'all are thinking about this at this point.
Ms. Harold Goff.
Thank you. I just, after going through and reading through all of the revisions, I just wanted to say that a lot of work has gone into this, and I can see all of the different changes. I really appreciate how it has been reorganized and structured. So it's a lot clearer than the last draft. And I look forward to it going back to committee one more time for just a few more tweaks. We've gotten some feedback in email, some things that I agree with that came in. And so I wanted to say great work. I feel like it's come a long way from where it started. And I'm looking forward to and planning to attend the next meeting just to make a few more tweaks. Particularly around, I'm really interested in understanding more how we can think about this extingent circumstances. And so I'll leave it there. I'm going to back up and let some other colleagues have some time.
Is there any further comment on policy 5120 before it goes back to policy committee? Ms. Byer?
No, I just, I thought that was the agreed upon that we would be further finalizing it at the policy committee meeting. So I don't have a lot to say tonight, other than I look forward to that. It's the 19th at 11:30 if I have it calendared right. If folks want to send us any feedback ahead of that, that's always helpful. I know we've gotten one email, but I think there might be other folks that have that want to give feedback, and we look forward to finalizing this and getting this as clean as we can and moving forward. But I appreciate everyone's input, and I appreciate Ms. Harold Goff, you joining that specifically. That'd be great.
Chair Umsit.
I had a couple of comments. I know we've went through a lot of different iterations of this policy and appreciate the work that's happened so far. There's a couple of things that I just want to uplift for the policy committee and make sure you take a look at. Under section D, it says visits to schools by state or local law enforcement for non-school related matters. Under number 3, the beginning part, it says before a law enforcement officer may question a student, they must first notify the student's parent or guardian. Wondering who the they is there. My assumption, I think it was changed in a different version. It originally it said law enforcement, and later in this new policy, it says principals when it comes to federal law enforcement. And I wonder if we wanted to track that same language to have principals. It's not clear again who the they is. One might read it as law enforcement. I think we prefer to have our school principals working on that. The other question I have is, should we also be using principal or designee or some other language around that as well? For principals who may or may not be in the building. There also is a question from me. Sorry, I've got lots of papers here, y'all. Around, in the newest version, we have And under F, it says visits to schools by federal law enforcement officers, but then we switch to the language that says immigration officers. In that opening paragraph, it kind of lists out different version of immigration, and I'm wondering if there's, for the committee to look at, is there language that's just cleaner? Instead of switching between federal law enforcement and then immigration officer, because it just feels like there are other federal law enforcement people that could get there. So is there a way to make that just cleaner and more all-encompassing? There was a question from community members, I think that may have came in the email. I met with some folks this week. They asked to be explicit around if there's not a warrant that principals do not need to permit act, or do not need to say yes to law enforcement in the building. So that's something for the policy committee to talk with lawyers around. That was another thing that got brought up in conversations I had with community members. And I think that ends all my questions, but I might send some more as I continue to read and look. I think this is a really important one, and I want one that we get correct. So.
All right, so this is again for first read. Mr. Malone, do we need a motion to send this to policy and bring it back for second read at our board meeting?
Excuse me. I think it's sufficient, excuse me, I think it's sufficient to just have a motion to approve it for first read since it's already slated to go back to the policy committee.
All right, is there a motion to approve for first read?
I make a motion to approve policy 5120 for first read.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Harold Goff, seconded by Ms. Byer to approve policy 5120 for first read. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, use the same sign. It passes unanimously. Thank you all for your work on this. The next item on our agenda is academic services. 2026 Arts in Our Schools Month proclamation. I will be sure to call on Kwame to talk about his role in arts in our schools as we move into discussion about this item. Welcome.
Have with us.
Mr. Turner, sorry.
Mr. Director of Arts Education is with us as
Thank you.
well.
Good evening, and thank you all for being here. Thank you for being here representing. Thank you, Work Chair Rogers, members of the Board of Education, and of course, Superintendent Dr. Anthony Lewis. This evening, we are excited to celebrate all of the magic that is arts education right here in Durham Public Schools. We invite the board and our community to commemorate all of the outstanding arts education happening right here in Durham Public Schools with this year's Arts in Our Schools Month proclamation, an annual celebration born from the U.S. Department of Education, honoring the achievements of students nationwide in dance, music, theater, and visual arts. Our students and arts teachers uplift and inspire our community with their extraordinary talents every single day and all year long, but March is a month dedicated to the arts, offering us a chance to rejoice in the boundless creativity of our students and the dedication of our amazing arts educators. The unwavering support of our arts partners community also could never be recognized enough. The arts not only provide an outlet for self-expression, but also serving as a catalyst for learning across all disciplines, aligning directly to our lovely strategic plan. Durham Public Schools is steadfast in its commitment to ensuring equitable, universal access to arts education for our DPS students, fostering a culture where every child's creativity can flourish without limits. I have the pleasure to visit many of the arts classrooms in my work across the district, and so often I get to witness how the arts serve as a powerful pathway for learning, helping our students understand themselves and the world around them in a deeper, more meaningful way. This is only possible because of our dedication from our certified, arts educators who serve the heartbeat of our programs, tirelessly uplifting and inspiring our young artists every single day. Just last month, DPS celebrated at one of our board meetings the new and renewed nationally board certified teachers for the 2026. And almost half of those teachers recognized were arts educators in our district. The Arts Education Department helps facilitate over 20 district-wide art events throughout the year. Many of you come to those events on a continual basis, and we could not thank you enough for that. So we want to say thank you on behalf of the arts educators, to the Board of Education members, Superintendent Dr. Anthony Lewis, DPS senior leadership, and all of our school administrators for always showing up and showing out for the presence at these events for our young people. It does not go unnoticed, and you are taking that additional time out of your time each time to celebrate our young artists from across Durham, and we could not thank you enough. Thank you for being a part of those young artists' journey right here in Durham Public Schools. Chair Rogers, I respectfully yield the floor to you and request the esteemed members of the Board of Education to unveil this year's proclamation celebrating Arts in Our Schools Month, please.
We're going to start off with Mr. Tab, please, and then we'll work our way back around.
Thank you so very much. This is really exciting. Just a comment, we do a lot of proclamations and arts. This is the shortest proclamation I've seen on this board, but however, the arts people, we just go right to the point.
Thank you.
That's how it works. All right. Proclamation Arts in Our Schools Month. Whereas all students have the right to an arts education that includes dance, media arts, music, theater, visual arts, and performing arts taught by certified arts educators in partnership with community providers. And
Whereas arts education encompasses a diverse array of roles, empowering students not only as performers and creators, but also as technical theater specialists, designers, stage managers, and curators, all of whom are vital to the artistic process. And
whereas arts education is part of a well-rounded education for every student as outlined in the Every Student Succeeds Act. And
Whereas the purpose of this celebration is to raise awareness of the lasting positive impact of arts education on the academic, personal, and professional growth of our students. And
Whereas arts education helps nurture healthy, inclusive communities where all points of view are respected. And
Whereas arts education shapes the way our students understand themselves and the world around them, allowing for students to be culturally responsive. And Kwame, will you read the next one?
Whereas arts education supports the social and emotional well-being of students and fosters a more positive, safer school environment. And
now therefore be it resolved that Durham Public Schools Board of Education does hereby proclaim March 1st through 31st, 2026 as Arts in Our Schools Month, and asks all to celebrate the importance of the arts in our students' lives. Signed the 12th day of March, 2026.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments? I'm gonna go, okay, we're gonna do Mr. Tab, Ms. Harrell-Goff. Mr. Hester will be able to give comment after Ms. Harrell-Goff. So get your thoughts together. And then I'll get to anybody else.
thank you. Thank you so much for this proclamation. I just wanted to say that when we talked about the proclamation, and I see where you did add the designers and the stage managers and all of these folks that work behind the scenes, that was so important. And so I just wanted to commend you for being inclusive of all the people that work behind the scenes. And I know that any of the parents that are listening are appreciative of that fact because they work extremely hard. So thank you for adding that into the proclamation. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for the suggestion.
I just wanted to take a moment to, all of these things about the arts are very important, but right now to lift up that we are in a time where art, creativity, arts in particular are being challenged, attacked, in our country right now, a culture. And the arts are very powerful, and giving our youth the opportunity to lean into their artistic selves. Their creativity is something that drives culture. It's all of these things and more. It's important in ways that are very important to our society. And so sometimes I think we forget how powerful it is until it's attacked. But if it wasn't, if you think about it, if it wasn't as powerful as it was, if the arts and being an artist wasn't that powerful, we wouldn't be seeing people trying to remove uh, uh, things from national museums and trying to control certain artistic um, uh, entities, trying to control them because they're trying to drive narratives. And so I really appreciate the emphasis we put on the arts in our schools. I want us to always to keep that lens very, very strong and not to think that it's something that is an other. It is absolutely essential to learning and to growth. And just imagine what our lives and our societies would look like if we did not have artists, if we did not support the arts in the ways that we do. It's definitely not a society that I would want to live in. So thank you for this proclamation.
As a student who is in the arts program at Hillside High School, I'm a part of the marching band. I just wanted to say like how important this is to us and how much we appreciate it because like this really highlights that the arts is not just like, you know, something to do after school or just another extracurricular to add on your resume, but the arts is like really a family, whether it be band or theater or music. It's really a place where students can go and find people who are, you know, just like them and share the same, you know, interests. And it's really just like that safe place. And this proclamation is really appreciated.
Colleagues, any other comments? I share all the sentiments that everybody else has shared. I'm very appreciative of the proclamation as a graduate of Durham School of the Arts. I really appreciate the work that is done in Durham to make arts a part of the education process, right? It keeps students connected to school, but it also gives them something to look forward to other than the traditional trades and a way to find joy in life. And that's really important to the work that we're doing here because we want to educate the whole child. And the arts is an important part of that, as well as helping them to learn different cultures and exposure to whatever might interest them and how to leverage that. Um, okay, I'm going to go to Ms. Umstead.
I was just going to build on all that's been said, especially for students of color. Arts education helps build their racial identities, positive racial identities, which helps improve their outcomes in school. So just building on everything that's already been said.
Ms. Byer.
And what a remarkable thing to have two arts educators on a school board who could make a motion and a second on this proclamation.
Dr. Lewis wants to make a statement.
Yes, just to reiterate my commitment as superintendent to our arts programs in a community where the arts are not only valued here in Durham Public Schools, but also in the wider community. Many of our scholars are connected to school for academics. Yes, we do have some students that run to school for that chemistry class, but for the most part, we do have a lot of students that feel that connection through the arts. You know, whether it's they're working on the lighting at a theater program or playing an instrument. And also as a former trumpet player all the way through college, Alabama State University Mighty Marching Hornets also, I saw the value of just discipline instilled in students. But not only that, it gives them a well-rounded experience. And so I'm super excited to continue to just beef up our already robust arts programs and super excited and appreciative of our major art supporters and directors. So thank you all so much.
Thank you all. I'll entertain a motion.
I move approval of the proclamation.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Harold Goff to approve the proclamation Arts in Our School for Arts in Our School Month, seconded by Mr. Tab. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, use the same sign. It passes unanimously, which is now 7-0. Ms. Chavez, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Mr. Turner.
Thank you. I just want to say former trumpet player can also be always trumpet player. So thank you so much.
Colleagues, the next item on our agenda is the intro to 2026 ELA standards. Dr. King?
Good evening, board members, and thank you for this opportunity. We are really excited tonight to introduce to the entire school community the new North Carolina K-12 English Language Arts Standard Course of Study. Over the last couple of years, the Department of Public Instruction has been working to revise the English Language Arts course of study, and recently the state board approved those changes. What that means for us is that over the next 18 months, we will be involved in a deliberative process to think about what that means in terms of our instructional program here in Durham Public Schools. And so I've been sharing with principals and assistant principals and instructional coaches over the last 3 or 4 months the fact that we have a great bit of work ahead of us over the next 18 months to do all of the things that will be required to prepare our teachers to deliver this new standard course of study. Tonight, we are excited to have Chanel Sidbury, our Assistant Superintendent for Continuous Improvement and School Supports, and Elizabeth Moffett, our Director of K-12 Curriculum and Instruction, here tonight to share with the community and the board the new standards, how they have changed, and what we will look forward to doing over the next 18 months to prepare for those shifts and changes. Ms. Sidbury.
Thank you, Dr. King. Good evening, Board Chair, Vice Chair, board members, as well as Dr. Lewis's administration. I'm Chanel Sidbury, as previously mentioned. Today, we are providing an overview of the 2026 K-12 English Language Arts Standard Course of Study. We will clarify what is changing, why it matters for students, and how Durham Public Schools will prepare for full implementation in the year 27-28. Next slide, please. This slide is just a reminder for the public, our schools, and anchoring in our expectations from our Board of Education. We appreciate every single approval for core curriculum and supplemental resources, as well as technology tools that provides the foundation of our core curriculum resources. Under Durham Public Schools Policy 3200, the district is responsible for ensuring that every school implements a coherent, high-quality instructional program that is aligned by state standards. And so when we bring forth approvals to you for core curriculum, that is, once that is approved by the Board of Education, that then becomes our anchoring foundation expectation in all of our schools. So North Carolina is providing these updates for the English Language Arts curriculum. Durham Public Schools must ensure that we, A, have curriculum alignment with updated state standards. Number 2, we provide instructional clarity for teachers and school leaders on what these things look like in practice, professional learning and supports that enable strong classroom implementation of these changes, and then monitoring and implementation of student outcomes as a result of these shifts. So this presentation will provide an update on how we are preparing the system to transition to these updated ELA standards. We want a long runway so that teachers do not feel pressure and overwhelmed with these updates and changes, but we also want to make sure that we're thoughtful to ensure alignment across curriculum, instruction, and professional learning. I'm now going to turn it over to a longtime colleague, Mrs. Liz Moffett, who will then walk you through all of these curriculum changes. And I would say, next slide, please.
Good evening, board members. Good evening to the Durham community as well. It's important for us to begin this conversation with clarity. The State Department of Public Instruction, along with the State Board of Education, sets the standard for our students. These are the end of grade and end of course expectations for what students should know and be able to do. Durham Public Schools selects the curriculum. This is the texts, lessons, and materials used to reach those goals. This presentation focuses on the state standards and not a curriculum change. Next slide. The standards revision process began in 2024 and included multiple drafts, public feedback, and state board approval in January of this year. The 26-27 school year will be a preparation year. Full classroom implementation will begin in the 2027-2028 school year. During this transition, we will continue using the current standards while preparing thoughtfully for the future. Next slide. The revised standards are grounded in 3 core principles. These principles reflect long-standing best practices in literacy instruction and are now made more explicit and intentional throughout the standards. Next slide. The first core principle is text at the center. Students will spend more time reading, discussing, and writing about grade-level complex text. Text complexity is no longer a single standard. It is embedded across all strands: comprehension development, foundational skills, and communication and writing. This ensures a consistent exposure to appropriately challenging material. Next slide. The second core principle is an integrated literacy model. Reading, writing, speaking, and listening are taught together, not separately. The standards reflect research on how literacy develops and emphasize integration across language domains. Students strengthen comprehension and communication skills through connected instruction. Next slide. And the third core principle is text variety. Students will engage with a wider range of genres, formats, modes, and lengths, including print and digital text. There is greater flexibility in text selection while maintaining balance between literary and informational text. This prepares students for the range of texts they encounter in college, careers, and civic life. Next slide. We will now take a look more closely at the structural changes between the current standards from 2017 and the new 2026 standards. Next slide. The current standards are organized into 4 strands with multiple layers. There are strands that are divided into clusters that are further divided into anchor standards and even further divided into grade level standards. While comprehensive, this structure can be complex to navigate. Next slide. The 2026 standards are streamlined. There are 3 strands: complex text, comprehension development, and communication and writing. This new structure reduces layers, reinforces an integrated literacy instruction, and improves clarity for educators. Next slide. The next major change is to the format of the standards. The new format includes both standards and objectives. Objectives clarify expectations but do not add new content. And this format of the standard and objective aligns with state board policy. Next slide. The next major change is around text complexity. Previously, text complexity was primarily addressed in just one reading standard. Now it is embedded throughout the standards. This ensures that students consistently engage with grade level text across instruction. Next slide. Reading is no longer limited to the 2 broad categories of literature and informational text. The term texts allows for greater flexibility and broader inclusion of text types while still maintaining a balance between literary and informational reading. Next slide. This change extends to writing. Students will continue writing arguments, informative pieces, and narratives. However, the terminology and range of written and spoken text types expands to provide flexibility and cross-disciplinary connections. Students will still write arguments supported by evidence, but the terminology shifts to clarify expectations. Next slide. The next major change is that foundational skills now extend into grades 6-12 to support older students who need continued development. And in early grades, oral language expectations are strengthened, reflecting research on the role of language in reading comprehension. Next slide. Next, we see that language, speaking, and listening are no longer separate strands in the standards. Instead, they are integrated throughout reading and writing standards. This reflects how students naturally use language in authentic contexts. Next slide. Finally, grammar and conventions move from a broad continuum to clearer grade-by-grade progression. Grammar skills will be clearly defined at each grade level, and it provides a more explicit set of expectations and supports skill development over time. Next slide. So in summary, the 2026 standards simplify structure, integrate literacy skills, emphasize complex text, expand text variety, and clarify progression across grades. The goal is coherence, clarity, and stronger literacy outcomes. Next slide. Over the next 3 years, the Department of Public Instruction will release additional guidance, including unpacking documents, glossaries, progression tools, parents and caregiver guides. Durham Public Schools will leverage these resources to support teachers and families during this transition. Next slide. So what's next for us in Durham Public Schools? This is a phased, intentional process. For the remainder of the 25-26 school year, we will focus on professional learning and collecting data on current resources. As we transition into summer 2026, professional learning will begin for school leaders, coaches, and teachers. A DPS team of 4 will attend a 2026 ELA Standard Course of Study statewide implementation session hosted in June here at the DPS Staff Development Center. The team will include curriculum and instruction literacy specialists and school representatives who will then expand that learning to school leaders and support district-wide readiness for implementation. The 26-27 school year will serve as a preparation year for the Curriculum and Instruction Department to update pacing guides and curriculum maps using input from coaches, teachers, and school leaders. These updates will be finalized ahead of the 27-28 school year, which will be the full implementation year. Full implementation will also include new local and state assessments aligned to the new standards. We will prepare thoroughly before implementation and not react during it. This time, I'll turn it back over to Ms. Sidbury.
Next slide, please. So again, policy 3200 is what we anchor in for this work. So while we're making this transition, we will continue to ensure that instructional materials, curriculum guidance, and professional learning remain aligned to this current state standards. Our next step with this work internally is to continue our crosswalk analysis and our curriculum alignment. We want to support schools with professional learning and instructional guidance, monitor implementation through our school support and data reviews and continuous improvement cycles, conduct ongoing review of instructional resources, including the return on investment investigations that I've spoken to the board about previously. Our commitment continues to be remaining committed to ensuring that every classroom is equipped with aligned standards, strong instructional resources, and the support that educators need to deliver high-quality literacy instruction for all students. This board has always been supportive of the needs of teaching and learning. We want to continue that as we go into the next implementation of these new standards. Next slide, please. Additionally, for our public, our families, there are some resources that are linked in board docs, which will take you to the 2026 K-12 ELA standards, as well as the current crosswalk and an FAQ document in terms of implementation. So there is no action on this information today. We just wanted to affirm to our community, to our schools, and to our Board of Education that we are actively pursuing excellence towards this state expectation while maintaining a seamless integration of the current level of excellence in our schools. And as I close out, I just want to say it is a pleasure to see the board in the sunlight. That's all we have today.
Colleagues, any questions or comments? Ms. Harrell.
Thank you so much for this update. This is really exciting. This is the part of the school board meeting that I enjoy the most, is getting to talk about all the things, you know, the learning and the instruction and the curriculums and all of the things that we want our kids to excel in. So my question is around, I know we're not talking about the curriculum, instructional things, but I am curious about how, like if you're thinking about when we will be able to see those things, when we're thinking about the next budget cycle, because I'm thinking about, with the stuff we're about to talk about now, especially with technology, what materials we'll have that will align with, the curriculums that we'll need and the instruction that needs to take place. It's too early for us to consider that for this budget cycle, but for the next one, can we expect to have that kind of information prior to, in the context of how that budget cycle will go for the next school year?
100%. We want to have a long runway of conversation. The literacy adoption in particular is one that has been complex here in Durham Public Schools, as I personally have stood at this podium about these conversations around 2018. So we do plan to have a long runway. And just to be sure to communicate to the board and also to our community, we do an RFP based on our core curriculum needs. We bring in a team and representatives of teachers, administrators from across all of our schools to give us insight on what they need in a core curriculum. We put that bid out. We go through the RFP process. We allow teachers to vote and engage on all those curriculums, including parent nights and resource information sessions. And so we plan to, with Dr. King's support and approval, definitely by mid-year of this upcoming school year, let's just say December, January, we'll have a very clear understanding of where we are with potential estimates in terms of what that investment would look like. And additionally, just know that it is our expectation. I do want to uplift Mrs. Gabby Hall, which is the K-12 Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction. She leads this work too. But we want to make sure we are bringing forth a recommendation as well as a clear list of things that we will sunset. We want this to be our major priority, including a move away from this idea of multiple curriculums at grade spans, which provide complexities as well as perpetuates inequities as schools students are transient from school to school. We have multiple curriculums in school that creates a lot of issues. So again, we're going to create a long runway. Been here down this rodeo, and so we want to make sure that you understand we're ahead of the game, and we will be proactive in our communications with regard to fiscal allocations.
Thank you so much. And if anybody is going to listen to this and play this back again, because all that information came real quick, but there were some things that I heard that I'm really excited about, especially the foundational skills expanding to K-12. I think that is phenomenal. Expanding additional written and spoken text. There's so much here that I'm really excited about. And I also remember being very confused, seeing the standards coming from the state and how, having to decipher through all of that. I remember at one time our school district, they had to take it and they were trying to break it down into packets for each of the grade levels because it was so confusing. So it looks like it's going to be a lot more intuitive, and so that's exciting. But thank you so much for this report, and I'm looking forward to following all of the progress.
Thank you, Ms. Harrelgoff. Mr. Tabb?
Thank you very, very much. As I always say, the board meetings, I always get excited about academic pieces so that we can continue to move our district forward in the most positive way academically. And so thank you for this. I just want to ask a basic kind of question. I saw a lot. There was a lot to present there and to digest. How do we align any of this, or is this aligned with technology needs as well? Since we're talking about a lot of technology, so I want to make sure there's nothing that changes our focus on how we deal with technology and then trying to implement this runway as well, as you said.
So yes, and if the board recalls in the community, if they have lots of free time to watch board meetings, in the technology update, I integrated that forecasting in for the core curriculum. And as you can see, the state standards now explicitly call out digital access to text. So we will have to grapple about what that looks like alongside of our commitment with technology, but there's no change in terms of expectations. What we're grappling with right now is our preference. And so we want to make sure that, again, we are making conscious decisions. If you recall in that technology presentation, I told you our curriculum is very much integrated with technology right now as it stands. And so we will, as a community, need to make sure that we're committed to all of those expectations and what they mean for us fiscally in the long run, 3 to 5 year investment in core curriculum as well, which would include digital access.
Ms. Umstead. Thank you, Mr. Tabb.
Thank you all. These excite me as well as someone who studies some middle grades language arts. So thinking about the standards and thinking about text is important. I think it builds that literacy, critical thinking skills that we need for our students to be having as we're moving into the 21st or continue to be in the 21st century. Back when we did do the curriculum adoption in 2018, I was here. We had a lot of I appreciate all the engagement that happened. So I thank you for Ms. Berry for kind of laying out how that process goes. There was a lot of opportunity for people to come and see materials and work with them. We also had a lot of conversation about supplemental materials to make sure that the text and curriculums were as diverse as we wanted them to be. And so I'm wondering, as we're thinking about adopting new standards, will that also include evaluation of some supplemental text or thinking about how do we keep diverse text in our system with some that we might already have and things that we might want to use that we'll be adopting to those new standards?
Everything is on the table. And so we're thinking about not only the things that are coming out of, in terms of our contracts, the things that were recently approved. We also want to get new feedback from staff to see if, is this really what you want? This is going to be a multi-year commitment. It's going to have to be something that we stand on business about and say that this is our core curriculum across all our schools, no matter where you are, no matter your shade of your skin. You have this as a foundational expectation, and the supplemental curriculum resources, of course, will get insight from both our staff as well as our students in terms of what they want. I also am going to challenge the team to continue to think about the public resources that we have, such as Durham Public Library. We do have logins to access digital text there. In what ways do they serve us? In what ways do they leave some vacancy for complexity and other purchases that we need? So yes, we're looking at all of those things to come back with considerations of both core curriculum and what our supplemental investments looks like too.
Appreciate that. And I hope that because I won't be here when y'all adopt the new curriculum, but we continue to use equity mindset as we approach it, right? We have a school district that's mostly Black and brown students. So how we make sure their standards align, because that part is really important. We need students to be engaging with work that's aligned with their standards, that's going to challenge them, and it represents who they are and the culture that they bring to our community. So thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Chair Umstead. Ms. Byer.
Thank you all for bringing this here. I see that 2017 was when these were last changed by the state, is overdue. And so glad that you all are planning ahead, but also giving a long runway for what comes next, because it will impact so many educators and students in the classroom. I don't know if it's a question for Dr. King and Dr. Lewis or for you all, but how are you all thinking about our work with AI, and is there an AI task force that is ongoing as we lead the district forward, where the students kind of know more than the adults sometimes? Do you have thoughts on
Yeah.
that as we go into this?
Yeah, so I will.
I was going to ask you a question about the AI task force. As you recall, if you recall, that was something that was in my post-entry plan to establish an AI task force. We have been having conversations with some folks in the community that are AI experts and that are steep in this work, even folks over at NCCU who has those $1 million of budget to talk about AI. So yeah, that AI task force is coming. And so that will be one of the tasks of this task force, not only to talk about potential policy implications, how teachers use AI, but most importantly, how our students engage in AI as well. And so what you'll find when we get to the part of looking at curriculum resources, that sometimes individuals will as part of their sales pitch, say, we have this AI model to assist with you. So we'll be very careful examining those when we bring those to the board.
I'll just also add that that is one of our professional learning tracks for our administrators and school leaders this summer at Leadership Retreat, is around making sure that we can spot and understand the implications of AI and how it is increasing in use in our schools.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Byer. Thank you all for answering my questions in advance around this presentation. I do have one more question that I didn't send in advance, and so I hope it didn't catch you too off guard. Love that y'all are going to have conversations with educators, get their feedback, etc. Is there any point in the process when parents and community will be involved in the conversation around the curriculum? I know there are lots of conversations now about what primary sources are being used, especially in the middle school and high school courses, and how potential budget implications impact what curriculums are available to students. But can you talk a little bit about what that might look like?
Sure, I mentioned that earlier, but I was speaking fairly quickly. But what our engagement process looks like is that RFP process, representation from all of our schools, presentations for our school leaders, including principals and APs. And then once we narrow down, because we can get an RFP for 20, if we narrow that down to 3 or 5 based on the feedback from our committees, then schools will have the opportunity to engage. So typically what happens is they ship materials right there at the school for teachers to use and grapple with, and then they send additional kits to the school so that schools can have curriculum nights and parents can engage with those resources. We also, in our previous adoption in 2018, hosted district curriculum nights at various locations. Myself and leading that CNI team previously, Mrs. Hall is leading that team now. So I'm sure Mrs. Hall is going to pick up where we left off and include both school level opportunities for engagement for our families, but also district nights where we can also get other community members and partners to come out to take a look at those resources as well as students, of course.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. All right. Oh, Dr. Lewis, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to, well, first of all, what we know is that students should be reading, writing, speaking, listening every single day, and these new standards allow for that. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge our educators who have been through the science of reading training. Some are currently still going through the science of reading training. That has prepared them and will continue to prepare them to implement these standards. And so a lot has happened since 2017, the last time those standards were updated. You probably remember the reading wars, whole language and balanced literacy, whole language that depended heavily on encouraging students actually to look at pictures in order to identify words, to balanced literacy where we're actually teaching phonics. You see that evident clearly in these new standards. And so I'm just excited about, even at the lower level, where students will be able to have some discussions about what they read with their classmates. And so I'm just excited about what's to come as a result of these standards. And keeping in mind, the standards is the what, and we get to decide, how we get there with the resources. So thank you to the team.
And I also just want to say shout out to the entire curriculum and instruction team for all of the work that they've been doing. And so there's pre-work, and now we're in the real work, and then we'll get in the real work in next year. So thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, the next item on our agenda is a resolution Durham Public Schools Board of Education in support of kids over corporations. Ms. Byer, did you want to introduce this?
I'm happy to. I was pleased to attend a webinar by the North Carolina Association of Educators. So excited about their new campaign. It's entitled Kids Over Corporations. There's a great website, kidsovercorporations.org, that parents and community members can sign an online petition, really raising concerns and attention to our leaders in Raleigh about the chronic underfunding and privatization movement over the last decade and a half, and drafted this resolution for this board's consideration. I think Vice Chair Rogers shared it with you all, and Ms. Smith has updated board docs, so the draft resolution is included in board docs. And welcome y'all's consideration tonight. I think they also were looking for county commissioners statewide to join on in support. And so I think it would be great to share a similar resolution with our commissioners who I believe would be supportive. So.
Thanks, Ms. Byer. So we're going to start again with Mr. Tab. Please, we're going to go Mr.
I'm still looking for it.
Okay, it's on the screen also. We're going to go Mr. Tab. Oh, you don't have it up either? All right. I'll start. And we're going to go to Chair Umstead, Ms. Carter Otten, Ms. Chavez, Mr. Hester, Ms. Byer, then Ms. Harrigoff, and Mr. Tab. Okay? It's the opposite of the way we read, so I'm gonna have a hard time with, but it's okay. All right. Resolution of the Durham Public Schools Board of Education in support of kids over corporation.
All right, we read, we almost there.
We're gonna start on this side.
We are. Whereas over the last decade, leaders in the North Carolina General Assembly have given away over $18 billion in corporate tax breaks and vouchers for private schools and
Whereas, as a result, public school students in North Carolina face overcrowded classrooms, outdated materials, crumbling buildings, low educator pay, and rising healthcare costs. And
Whereas North Carolina is now one of the most poorly funded public school systems in the nation, ranking 50th in a recent analysis by the Education Law Center, and annual funding per student is $5,600 below the national average. And
whereas North Carolinians want strong public schools for our children, our families, and our communities. And
Whereas North Carolina's Constitution,
Right.
oh, sorry, my bad. Let me back up. I missed it.
Whereas North Carolina's Constitution guarantees every child a sound basic education and
Thank you. Whereas since the Leandro versus State of North Carolina case was filed in 1994, the courts have consistently found that far too few students are receiving an education that meets the state's minimum standard, and
Whereas a strong investment in our public schools is a critical investment in our future and the economic driver for our state. And
Whereas, despite Republicans holding majorities in the North Carolina Senate and House, the North Carolina General Assembly has not passed a state budget, and North Carolina is the only state operating without a state budget. And
whereas years of underfunding of public schools by the North Carolina General Assembly has shifted more funding pressure on local boards of county commissioners who have often raised property taxes to cover state cuts. And
whereas democracy must prioritize people over corporations. As local elected leaders of Durham County, we call on all members of the North Carolina General Assembly and Governor Josh Stein to prioritize
1, put kids first. Invest in at least $20,000 per student by 2030, the highest funding in the Southeast.
fund modern facilities, free school meals, and more health professionals in schools.
recruit and retain quality public school teachers and staff with affordable health care, better retirement benefits, and a state raise of at least 25% for all school employees.
2, end corporate tax breaks. End corporate tax breaks and redirect that money to schools and healthcare.
eliminate private school vouchers.
fix the tax system so the wealthy finally pay what they owe.
reclaim our democracy, pass fair maps, protect voting rights, and restore checks and balances in the state government.
lift the ban on collective bargaining for public school workers,
Protect the constitutional rights of all and reject the use of fear, violence, and intimidation to divide our communities. Signed this 12th day of March, 2026.
Thank you all. Colleagues, is there a motion?
And make a comment? Or
I'm
ask a
trying to do
question?
the motion and then do the comments during discussion.
I move approval of the resolution of the Durham Public Schools Board of Education in support of kids over corporations.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Harold Goff to approve the resolution of Durham Public Schools Board of Education in support of kids over corporations and seconded by Ms. Byer. Is there any discussion? Ms. Harold Goff.
I just wanted, can you give us some clarity on what happens next with this resolution?
Absolutely. So it's my recommendation that we send this over to county commissioners, ask them to sign on, and that we send it to the delegation so that they know that this is where we're landing around in favor of students over corporations, and they can do their work to advocate for that on the state level.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Ms. Chavez?
I really like this. Thank you, Ms. Byer, for bringing this to us. I just want to point out that while we are giving corporations tax breaks, undocumented individuals are contributing billions and billions and billions of dollars to the taxes in this country. And so this is part of a very exploitative system, and this money should be given to the people who helped to create this country and build it, and to our children who will who deserve it no matter what, but also will be doing will be leading us in the next chapter of things. So anyway, thank you. Let's keep this energy.
Ms. Cardon?
Also want to express appreciation to Ms. Byer for bringing this to the group. And just to name also that I think it's powerful when advocacy comes from Durham, but I would love for us to share this with colleagues at other school boards across the state who might be interested also in bringing it to their boards and discussing it, as I think it could be more powerful even if they were to develop their or build on this for their own districts.
Mr. Hester, you have any comment? You don't have to. Okay. You can name that. Chair Armstead noticed a typo that we need to edit.
North Carolinians, we just need to correct the spelling.
Thank you. Thank you all for entertaining this resolution. At such a time like this, I'm reminded that boards of education, specifically in our blue counties, are very similar to middle management. We don't get to control the purse, right? And so we have the district's budget, but we can't, levy our own tax. We can create policy, but the policy is inward and is about what is happening within the district and not what is happening to the district or around the district. So we can't manage up, and we can't really have true impact on gun policy or immigration policy. We can't create policy that will protect all of us the way we want Durham to be protected, and that we are taking on the burden financially of trying to take care of things that the state should be funding for our students and for our educators. And so we have to take the work there, let them know that we are serious about investing in our students, and it's inhumane for them not to do so. And so I really appreciate the language this coming now while we are in budget conversations, because we as middle management in between the state and dependent on the state and the county and the federal government, being able to pay DPS employees enough, invest enough in technology and infrastructure is never going to happen from the seat that we're in. It's got to come from the outside. And so I appreciate you all passing this. So all those in favor? say
Aye.
All opposed? Use the same sign, please. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Oh. Sorry. With all that, the next item on our agenda is the superintendent's recommended budget.
Good evening. The IT group is going to call up the PDF on page 9 for us, and we can pick up where we left off. So we lifted this up in a slightly different format at the joint meeting that feels like it was just a few hours ago. And we talked about with county commissioners and the county budget staff and the manager, our continuation needs that you've heard me talk through several times, and we still are not any clearer on what the state might do than we were before, with the exception of Governor Stein has released a call on the General Assembly to invest some funds in compensation for certified and classified employees, calling for a 5.8% on average increase for certified, a 2% for classified, as well as making some necessary adjustments for the benefits that come along with that. Of particular interest is the governor's call for the state to restore master's pay, and we've ever so hopeful that they'll do that, and we can shift the local dollars we currently invest in that back to the state, and then can, in this budget puzzle, sort of rework that and dedicate those resources towards the classified pay environment, most likely, in order to help make all that work for us. So watching that carefully, we'll see what happens. We still think we're waiting on things to settle in Senate District 26 still. And so hopefully there's some conclusion to that soon, and folks can figure out who's in charge in the General Assembly. And we hope that changes. So so for now, nothing has changed right in that continuation space, and it's still our sort of most expensive scenario that we might forecast in abundance of caution as we plan. Some things that have changed since the last draft is that we have, as an administration, reacted to significant feedback where classified employee compensation is concerned. And so before today, the draft was reflective of a 5% increase, or ensuring that we had enough local resources to do a 5% increase regardless of what were to occur at the state level. We have now shifted that to reflect what resources we would need above and beyond our continuation estimate in order to align our classified salary schedules with a $19.22 per hour minimum wage to match what's currently occurring for our Durham County government counterparts. And so we've tried to lay that math out very carefully. And so that item as a standalone would normally be $13,288,000. To avoid duplicating something that we've partially asked for already in the continuation budget, we've backed out a little over 2.7 million to reflect we need an additional 10,562,874 to bring the two parts whole, and have the resources to implement what would be a slightly greater than 12% raise across the board for classified employees in Durham Public Schools. We continue to address the transportation safety assistance supplement at the $100 per safety assistant for 86,658 investment. The next section, sort of near the bottom here, is a schedule change for occupational therapists, physical therapists, occupational therapy assistants being added this time as a change from the previous iteration. So adding 32,866 in cost, and the next version will include the letter G in change for the March 26th session. And so that total cost for both groups to recalibrate their schedules is $302,596. So in the previous conversations, we talked about aligning or modeling our occupational and physical therapists after the Charlotte-Mecklenburg model, which is pretty similar to some other urban school system models that we see, where those related service professionals are paid in a manner that's consistent with our speech language pathologists and audiologists who are treated as certified employees in the state of North Carolina. Where the therapy assistants are concerned, to provide context around what we're doing there, just sort of following some industry standards, looking at an alignment where they're equivalent to about 70% of the occupational therapists and physical therapists, to give you some perspective of how we tried to balance those items out. There is an exhibit deeper into the budget book document where we flesh out what those scales look like. specifically for the occupational therapy assistants that lives on the MH12 scale, and the therapists proper live on the MH18 scale, so where you can see those in greater detail for that consumption. So wanted to lift up that particular change. So another change as we progress to page 10 of the document is we have removed the request for additional resources for the HR department realignment. And instead, Dr. Lewis and the team will work to realign some existing FTEs in the organization to address what we recognize as the needs in HR without pursuing additional resources from the county to make that happen. Farther down, no changes in this draft where capital outlay are concerned. And so we still address the $5 million, which is our current level of funding for capital outlay investment from the county, from their general resources. Above and beyond that, we're on this agenda tonight, the board approved the spending of some ARPA dollars that we received from the county to take care of some HVAC and boiler needs. We still have lottery resources forthcoming in the new year. We'll still have some repair and renovation funding from the state coming forward in the new year to support those efforts. And then we also lift up sort of the technology component around where there's been a lot of conversation. I may ask Dr. Lewis to make some comments about the feedback we've recently received, or even Dr. King, where the technology is concerned with the interactive panels. So it's a little bit out of my space, but the Chromebooks, right, so this reflects a 6 through 12 refresh as far as the grade span, and allows Dr. Lewis and his team who interact in this area more space to reflect on the K-5 model. And so just pressing pause there for a moment. But this does still include some iteration of interactive panel or display panel for educators in this particular model. And again, seeking funding for those in the capital outlay revenue stream to mitigate the need to share those resources with charter schools. I wish we could fit more things in capital outlay, but these are these are the things that are appropriate. And so with all that said, it brings sort of the current expense request as an increase of about 25.7 million, and the capital outlay request is an additional 2.8 million in resources that we would request from the county. Before we sort of segue into the question series, we did collect feedback from board members through the simulator tool, and we've done the work to sort of compile a median or an average reply where appropriate for the board, and that we will share on the screen and talk through, sort of like we did in May or June of last year when we already knew how much we were going to get from the county. And so this is doing this activity a little bit earlier, and we will probably do it again, or we're guaranteed to do it again once we find out what kind of support we're going to receive from the county. So, so in just a moment, I'm going to work to share my screen. Get more and more like my grandparents every day. Okay. Aha, okay. So in terms of this tool, we put some models in front of the board to contemplate where classified pay is concerned, right? And so we had, through the meet and confer process, received a proposal that involved a 25% increase to reach a $22 an hour minimum wage, that also included an additional 0.25% step for the step progression. For each of these yellow columns, I went through these yellow items, I went through and made sure we did the additional work to back out the part of classified pay that we had built in continuation to apply that consistently across these three. And so that would make the first proposal a little bit over 26.7 million or so after we back out the part that would be included in the continuation estimate. The middle figure is the 12.08% total, and I think we need to check what we've got plugged in there. So if you bear with me 1 second, I may tweak that number before we're finished at the end. I think we've got a typo in there. And at the bottom, we reflect the 5% increase. That would be a little over 2.7 million. So we can see a majority of the board elected the option in the middle in terms of pursuing that 12.08%. And again, I may tweak that number to make sure the total's right at the bottom of the spreadsheet before we're done. We sort of had a split with the transportation safety assistance supplement item, and I wasn't really sure what to do with that and how it reflected this, but I think it's worth noting that there were, that we had 4 responses that said, yes, let's do this to some degree, 2 responses for 100, 2 responses for 200. And so conceivably, right, if I'd had a $150 option on there, I probably would have flagged that as a yes. And so I didn't have that option there, but I just wanted to call out just kind of how that landed as we went through that. So there was a majority that wanted some iteration of that. So potentially, as we work through this with Dr. Lewis, the next draft might reflect 150. We need to have some conversation around it, but we had a split on those amounts. Let's see. Next space, we had overwhelming support on the OTPT conversation where those folks were concerned. At the time that we built this tool, the occupational therapy assistants were not sort of in the conversation yet, but everyone who responded supported that item. And so that was just a very resounding yes to take care of that. Throughout the way, we tried to contemplate some things, right? Just sort of forecasting into the future of some things that we might have considered to balance things out if we don't get enough money or we have to make some choices. And so I think the board, took some action earlier this year to free up some money in the current year related to landscaping contracts, right? And so the board did cancel some contracts. Some of those contracts were, we were able to reduce. Some of them had already been fully expended. And so we may have the potential that we go into the new year not engaging in those contracts and having those funds freed up for consumption in other ways. We also had some contemplation around how we allot staffing and making sure that it's in alignment with how we're funded, making sure that it reflects the realities of our declining enrollment, right? And so recognizing that our enrollment is declining and our AIG funding is contingent upon it's 4%. The state, at least the state says 4% of our population is gifted or they fund us in that way. We know that we're more gifted than that in Durham. And so nonetheless, right, we still move sort of proportionally to reflect the decline. And so it did seem like a space where it was prudent for us to follow the money and follow our enrollment where that's concerned. And that's, haven't had to manage declining enrollment in quite some time. And so I don't enjoy these thought patterns, but that's just kind of where we all are across the state, except for a lucky few that are sprawling. And so then sort of in the next category, Durham has had a practice of allotting K-3 classrooms by half of a child less than the manner in which the state funds us. It seems like a trite sort of adjustment, but that item as a standalone is $2 to $2.5 million in value to the district once you apply it across the board. And it does not really impugn upon our ability to be compliant with K-3 class size, right? So we're allotting in a manner that's compliant with the already very low requirement for K-3 class size. As some good news in the 4th and 5th grade space, right, in the current school year, that was allotted at a 1 to 25, shifting that to a 1 to 24 to be aligned with recommendations. And so there's some trade-off there sort of in that space in the elementary building. And so as a consequence, that means it's 6 positions sort of district-wide in the elementary arena where that's concerned, considering our declining enrollment. The next item, that was just a no, right? So any kind of adjustments for how we allot enhancements was just a resounding no. Administration's in the same space. And so the state of North Carolina funds us at 1 to 191 K-5 students for enhancement teachers. Durham's historically been 1 to 126. And when we review that, a change of that nature or even moving in that direction would have been far too detrimental to the things that we like to offer in Durham. And it would have been a real struggle for some of our smaller elementary schools to be able to offer all of the enhancements that we've come to care for and that our students deserve. And so that's just not going to be a thing that we're looking at rolling forward. In the high school space, just sort of looking at, so middle school is already in alignment. So that's really why there's not a conversation there. In the high school space, for 9th grade, the state funds us at 1 to 26.5. No idea why that's the number, but it's been that way since I've been a finance officer. It seems kind of arbitrary. But 10th through 12th, the state has funded it at 1 to 29 for quite some time. We looked at that. Some folks felt comfortable with it, or enough folks felt comfortable with saying, yeah. I will just share, as we worked on staffing allocations, we explored what that would look like across our high schools. That was going to be hard. We already, just for additional context, looked at how we had been allotting high schools, and over time, and when position control maybe wasn't as strong as it should be, some high schools had some things well beyond the allotment formulas in Durham. And so we've done a lot of work to bring that under control. And that was probably all they could tolerate this cycle. And so making any kind of adjustment to how we allot for 10th through 12th grade would have been too hard to put on top of that. And so just for awareness, right, we've not made a shift in this allotment season where that's concerned. Counselors, happy to report, none of us feel comfortable with making changes in that, right, in this environment. And so we have been able to allot counselors in a manner that we've held flat, right? And so no changes in terms of how we've distributed counselors in the district. And in fact, have made some improvements to the documents that we use to allot that, right? And so, so broadly speaking, first 500 students, there's a counselor. For every 250 students beyond that, allotting an additional counselor. And so we've been able to make sure that's in place without needing additional staffing, right? So it worked out to a net 0 with that model in the district. In some of our larger high schools, have seen sort of a pickup in that space as a result of us fine-tuning that. And they have been surprised and have asked, are you sure? Yes, we're sure, right? So we've been able to tinker with the spreadsheet and in particular, I'm thinking about our mega campuses, right? Like Jordan, Riverside, DSA, that super large, right? They're beyond 1,700 students. And I think the old documents that we had been working with in Durham for a very, very, very long time were built to discuss 1,700. And I think the spirit of the formula wanted there to be more to kick in beyond that. And it wasn't, the formulas weren't built to make it happen. And so we fixed that this go round, where some of those larger campuses are benefiting from an additional counselor presence. And I think some of our larger elementary schools are seeing some pickup in that regard as well. with that shift. So just wanted to talk about that. The next section, there was not a lot of appetite for any of those things. I think we saw some stray kind of marks there, but not enough so I think the local master's pay still seems important to the board as a collective. And so no appetite there. Again, we hope the state will pick up that cost sometime soon, and that will help the board move forward with some other items. The additional EC and ESL supplements remain a thing. I'll come back to the board in the future about subs and what I see going on in that space. I think there's a need, right? And so I appreciated all of the replies that we received from the board about, hey, some of these things we might want some more context and understand. Couldn't really fully answer or feel comfortable committing to an answer necessarily without some context. And so at a future meeting, we'll provide some context around that item and how that's administered in Durham. This next section, right, we have here just sort of as conversation, right, because it's only fair and reasonable that as enrollment declines and we have to have conversations about schools and those natural formulas that trigger change, central office merits a look. And so we don't want to lose sight of that. And so we put sort of different percentages there and the dollar values that would shift with that. As a reminder, and I think we shared in that way in a number of our responses that we received ahead of the meeting, there is a review that's underway, or sort of a comparability review that's underway, that measures Durham Public School Central Office to some other districts. And so we're sort of excited to see the fruits of that report, and we look forward to being able to share that in the near future. And so that will be an important document that helps to guide any type of adjustments that we might make to central office. But as a collective, the board averaged out to about 3%. And we saw those responses range anywhere from 1 to 5, and it averaged out at about 3, just for some context around that. I'm doing really good for the interpreters tonight. I'm being slow. In the next section where we sort of look at those capital outlay items, there was not a tremendous appetite with the board responses where the interactive panels were concerned. We did see favorability for a model of doing 612 devices for the refresh only this go round. So that was a pretty strong reply that we saw from the board. And then regarding just sort of our ongoing capital outlay needs in the Lavender, we saw a range. It ranged anywhere from holding to the 5 up to the 8. And we had someone mark each of these levels throughout the process. And so we add them together and we took an average for in that case. And so it averaged closest to the 6 million mark, which makes some sense because that's the level where we were for a couple of years prior to the most recent cycle. So not surprised to see it land in that way. So just wanted to share that. And so Dr. Lewis and the team will have some conversation about that feedback between now and the next meeting to see if we move the needle on capital outlay any further. Continuations at the bottom. I locked it in, so it's a yes, it's a must do, it's there. So you weren't really able to modify that. I think important to note too, we built this to whatever decision you made, we built this to automatically calculate the charter share for you. And so those columns reacted to your work as you went through that. And it reacted to my work as I went through and put in your averages. And so I know I need to, I duplicated my effort to back out some numbers earlier, so I needed to fix that. So old Jeremy thought that young Jeremy forgot something earlier and duplicated some work. So at the bottom, it lifts up for us a total request between current expense and capital outlay, right? When we look at sort of the median or average board reply. And some of these things, it was more appropriate to find a median. Some things, the average was more appropriate. But just wanted to share that, and I know that you all were eager to see that. And we'll keep doing this as we get through appropriate touch points. And so there, I'll stop sharing my screen. And I'm happy to answer questions this evening and do whatever I can to support you through this very difficult, complicated process for you.
Colleagues, who wants to go first? Ms. Carter Otten. Okay, Chair Umstead, then Ms. Carter Otten.
Ask a clarifying question as to next steps, because you kind of, I have more questions, but we filled out the sheet you just walked us through, like what will happen next with that? I know some of that's pending our discussion tonight.
Yes, we're very anxious for your discussion tonight. And the team will come back together very quickly and reflect on the feedback shared and determine, right, are there any items in this that we need to move up or down? And use that to inform what the draft will look like for the next meeting on the 26th, I believe it is. And so, and our goal at that point, right, is to have you authorize a specific request to the county manager. But we're going to have a very narrow window coming up to reflect on your feedback from this tool and from this document to see how we might move that needle a little bit.
Did you have a follow-up, Ms. Umstead? No, you good? Ms. Carter Otten.
Thanks so much. It's always helpful to fill out that tool and then really useful to see how we landed as a board. And thanks for the extra explanation tonight of each of those different pieces of the budget and your recommendations. That's super helpful. I just have a few questions. What can you share with us and the community the different ways you alluded to this, but if there's anything else you could say about the different ways that district leadership is examining ways to make potential cuts? So in light of the fact that money is short, what are all the ways we're exploring and how are we doing that to examine where we don't need to be spending what we're spending or not doing the things that might be extra right now?
So very happy to just share that I think all of my colleagues in every space of the district, right, so the cabinet's a group of 7 at this point, right, and we're everybody's been thinking in that way. And so just the folks in Dr. King's camp, so Ms. Sidbury in particular, doing that return on investment review of our curriculum resources and identifying spaces where we may be duplicative or we may have opportunities to get something for less and have seen many requests for proposals flowing through the purchasing department from her camp and in their efforts to be as efficient as they can with resources. So I've seen that in action and that work is underway. Our Mr. Barnes and his team in operations have been so incredibly diligent in contemplating every vacancy that they have and really reflecting on, and he's got a really unique vantage point of knowing what that area looked like a few years ago and comparing that to now and reflecting on to what degree do we walk that back to what it was before. And so he has made some proposals to us, right, with some of his vacancies that may not be needed, and working to find ways to make operations sort of flow. And so we're really grateful for that. Finance constantly thinks about this, and glad that we're not alone in that in Durham. And so there are some things that we may bring forward in the next couple of months that we can see that make us a little more efficient in some of our practices. Dr. Lewis is very tired of hearing me complain about some of our aging facilities that we cling onto and the utility consumption and maintenance costs, right? And so we're at a spot though now where we are talking about that a lot more, and there are things in motion, right, that the board has approved to help us evaluate those things. And so I'm very happy to see us there doing that, right? And so that's another great example. of things that we're doing. And so I think we're constantly in that frame of mind now. And those are just a few examples. The report that's to come from RTI, I think will be a very helpful item for us. And we're putting a lot of stock in that to help us look critically and have an objective outsider look of our central office. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing all of that and for the work that you and others are doing to really take a close look at all of these different pieces of what the district is doing right now. I just wanted to clarify the classified pay increase is being proposed. Would that be for all classified staff from like aftercare subs to those in central, like executive director type?
Right. So that 12% or so, all that calculation is applying that across the board for all of our categories of classified employees. Yep.
And is that the step increase between the scales that you're proposing? Can you share that with?
So the current schedules that are in the exhibit are consistent with the current model, right? That's at the 0.5%. And I think, it's not lost on us that that's sort of the next area where we can make improvement. And so I think we see just lifting the minimum wage alone, the cost that would come with that. And then I think that's sort of the next thing, right, is what can we do, with the step increases. And even beyond that, the compression that exists between the grades on the schedule is another pressure point that can create some opportunities, but also come at a cost. So if we move the differentiation between just slightly between NC4 and NC5 as an example, it's going to roll up through those other grades and create costs. And so yeah, so for now it's at the 0.5%, but we recognize that our competitors in the market, some of them are 0.5% like us, others are percents, others are 1.5%. And then those are also, right, those folks are also wrestling from various minimum wage touch points. And so there's a lot of different ways we could go about it, but that's my very long way of sharing that we're at 0.5%, but thinking about that for the future.
Thank you. Yeah, that feels like we've talked for every year I've been on the board about the need to raise the bottom and reduce compression. And yet that feels like the impossible, like going back to what I think Vice Chair Rogers was saying earlier about the situation we're in where we can only do so much from the local level. I can't even envision a situation in which, I mean, it sounds like you're saying we could be doing both really in the way that we really need to be doing to support.
And I think right, so the model that DAE brought forward through Meet and Confer is an exemplary model for classified pay, right? And so I absolutely would never dispute, right, that's a great model and reflects everything that we would want to happen. And so you can see sort of through the simulator tool how that kind of drives the cost and how that can shift the differences very quickly. I'm reflecting back on when the minimum wage for the state of North Carolina changed. At first they made that movement to 13 and then they made the movement to 15. And I remember when they sent us a survey, right? So speaking to your point about the support, I remember completing a survey. I was finance officer in Alamance Burlington at the time when those changes happened, and we all filled out a survey to let them know, if you make these changes, this is what it would cost for us to implement for our local employees, our enterprise funded employees like in school nutrition, and this is what it would look like for you to properly address our compression concerns and things of that nature. And I think we did that for the fiscal research arm of the General Assembly. And I think So I think at some point in time, they were trying to give some thought to, could we give school systems some extra money to really handle classified pay in the right way in light of that minimum wage change, right? And then I think they even saw the price point. I don't know that they ever shared it with us, right? The cumulative result from all of us participating in that survey a number of years ago. And then there's been no more conversation since, right, from the state level. And so it's been very interesting history on that. Yeah.
I have one more question, and then I'm going to pass to my colleagues. We've been hearing a lot tonight in public comment and through email, these stories of what happens when we don't, what the stories that happen around extra duty pay. And so it has me just in a place of being curious now and wondering how other districts that are doing things really well, like innovative districts that can support strong retention of staff and have great student outcomes, are they doing this? And like, how do they do it? What do we know now and what could we learn about it?
I spent some time, right. So I think first, just sort of want to think back to the hearing that we had Thursday last week, right, and we received some very concerning feedback from custodians, and that it really bothered me. Not that they shared, but what had happened to them bothered me. And so while they were talking, I was emailing finance staff, trying to get information about where those things were. And Friday around lunchtime, so the next day around lunchtime, we had addressed all of those sort of backlogged items, right, for various reasons, pushed it out direct deposit that evening. And so just cleared that out, right? And so just committed to making sure when these things are brought to my attention, would love to get things to where they don't have to reach my level, right, for it to get addressed. But I the extra duty process in Durham, I think, is one, just the process itself and the flow of the paperwork is a tremendous opportunity for improvement. It's been one that I've kind of it's been on the burner, and other things for me just keep kind of creeping up to the front burner about how to make that process run better. And I've thought back in some senses, right? You know, in the case with like our custodians, it's effectively overtime pay, the ability to get overtime pay for working beyond the normal hours. In some other cases, it's a special duty item that's really probably more appropriate to call a stipend, right? And so I'm thinking back to my first district, right? I'm like, how did we handle these things in other places? And so like Caswell County Schools, tiny little district, 6 schools, 2,200 kids. We just had a form. Johnny Appleseed's been approved to work overtime. Right, I approved Johnny to work 6 hours of overtime. The next time you process payroll, please pay Johnny his 6 hours of overtime. And we rolled on. I think in my time in Alamance, we had certain positions that were just default, pay them their overtime if they earned it, right? They were our bus drivers, which is the case in Durham, right? Bus drivers, it's a default overtime. I can't remember if our custodians were structured that way. They may have been, right? But we had a very kind of high and tight process, you know. So my equivalent, so as the chief operating officer in Alamance would send me communication. Jeremy, we need to be able to pay Susie overtime for XYZ thing, right? And so it was a little more nimble of a process where if a colleague on cabinet had approved it for something under their umbrella, we made sure it happened. And it here it's there are a lot of hands that touch the same sheet of paper, and it's a very, it can feel cumbersome. And so I think we've got some opportunities to make that maybe a less cumbersome process. And so I've been thinking about it, and we'll do some work to make that flow a little more smoothly. And I think that will fix a lot of what we're looking at. And then I think there's maybe a separate issue, right? If we do have someone who's not allowing folks to get something maybe they ought to, I think that's a separate conversation. But at least from my vantage point, you know, I'm committed to doing something that can streamline the paperwork and just make that easier to deal with. But anytime someone has these issues, though, um, it's okay to get it to me, and I'll explore it and keep it moving in the short term, like we were able to do last week with the issue that reached my level of attention.
Colleagues, Dr. Lewis, Mr. Teeter, we have about 10 minutes left on this topic. We're going to give it the time it needs because we know this is our last opportunity to really influence that. Ms. Chavez?
Thank you for all of this. And thank you just for being responsive in the budget to so many different things, and especially for prioritizing the lifting of the minimum wage for classified staff. I do want to ask about extra duty pay. I'd really like us to include that because it is, I just think it's important to embrace the principle of compensating people for their work. And I think it will also point out to us where we need more resources, even though you know, that may be difficult and a strain on schools. But where did that fall in our priorities generally as a board? It wasn't listed, so it didn't win, but you know, was it mixed, or was I the only person who voted for that?
There was not a lot of reaction to it, but and I assume, right, so right, we're speaking to one or two meet and confer sessions ago. I came back to meet and confer with some homework, right, where we evaluated, I think I had evaluated Wake County's model, right? So, and so specifically the extra duty space of grade level chairs and club sponsors and things of that nature, right? So I think, right, that's the space we're looking at. So, so that cost, right? So that cost sort of reflected, it's in line, right, with what we kind of shared at meet and confer if we were to model the Wake method for those categories of things. And so, yeah, it was not an overwhelming sort of response there. But I do recognize it was important in the feedback that we heard in meet and confer. And so it's, yeah, I mean, but to answer your question, right, it was sort of a limited yes responses on that one in that first pass of the simulator.
Thank you. I would just be interested to have more discussion on that and the value of considering that, even if we considered perhaps a less robust model than everything that you included on that list. But with the idea of getting to a place of compensating more fully for labor, yeah, rather than assuming people should just do it because traditionally this was a primarily female field, and people are, you know, expected to do things for children out of the goodness of their heart, but we should pay them for that. So I would be interested to have that more discussion on that. And it may not be a priority this year. It's not clearly right now, but I would also encourage it, you know, administration and a future board to consider that as well. I also wanted to ask, how many central office staff is 3% roughly?
Well, so I think just in terms of, while I fumble here through my documents, we, in the simulator, right, we sort of quantified that like as the salary pool, right? And so we didn't necessarily look at like an average cost of employees, but just sort of a rough pass at that. You said 3% of
Yeah,
the employee
yeah,
pool?
what we landed on.
I mean, it would be about 17, right? And so, but in order to really move that, and that's a rough, just kind of on the fly estimate, and I can go back and look at some more exhaustive reports to get you a more precise number. But and those are numbers, right? And so these numbers that you look at and that we saw at the simulator, um, you can hit those pretty quickly with sort of some specific things. So that's something to think about too, where it may be a target of that nature might be achieved with only 10, depending upon what types of positions we're talking about. Yep.
All right, well, thank you. Although I put in a vote for that, I also am concerned about the implications of that. So just, would want to know what those are. Maybe there's not time to fully assess before we pass the budget, but that is a consideration. And then also, do we have a timeline, excuse me if I missed this, of when RTI will be done with that assessment?
Just lean over and ask Dr. King that 2 weeks? Okay, about 2 weeks.
Okay, awesome. And then lastly, the admin scales that are on the end of the list, these are the equivalent, or these are aligned to coordinator through assistant superintendent. Is that correct?
So it would run coordinator up through, like coordinator up through deputy level.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it possible to get those same scales in the same format for this year? Because I think that I find this on our website, but not the same exact type of scales as are presented in the budget booklet. So I would like to be able to compare.
Okay, so you're saying what I have in the exhibit in the budget book, you'd like to see that same chart now that we have now on the website modeled for, got it.
Yes,
Okay.
just so I can compare, yeah, like I can compare the other
Yeah.
classified levels.
Absolutely, we can do that.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you. That's it. Thank you so much.
Can I ask a follow-up question to Ms. Chavez's question about the 3% in central office? I'm looking at the central office position database that's online. And when I'm looking at that, I'm seeing SNS assistants, so school nutrition workers. I'm seeing some ESLs, techs and specialists, payroll techs, records technicians. And so I see AIG testing facilitator, food service equipment folks, teaching and learning coaches, mentors that are on full release. When you say 3%, you're including all those people too.
Right, and I think too, it's important to sort of capture those folks, right? Some of those categories, right, are itinerant in nature, and so their home base may be central office, but they are supporting many schools, and they spend their whole days in schools. And so I think if we were to have some sort of conversation about an adjustment to central office, right, we're not going to be looking at like an occupational therapist that
Right.
home base might be Bacon Street, but serving 8, 9, 10 schools, right? So
Right.
we would not.
I mean, there's like a courier, there's the CTE equity specialist. We're talking about everybody in central office when we talk about a 3% cut, not just people in Fuller Building.
Right.
Well, there's people in Fuller Building that are, so in essence, you were talking about administrators, some certified and some classified employees that are in these buildings. So there are some classified employees in this building, so secretaries, bookkeepers, the likes, they're in this building as well. In the full
So
central
that's
office.
where your facilities folks are, like the carpenter electricians. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to really understand when we say central office cuts, what we're talking about.
So like my mind, right, it's like I think about the Fuller, Bacon Street, Staff Development Center, Old Northern, Hamlin Road, right? We're sprawled everywhere. But You know, so it's a pretty broad reach, but we also recognize we're also just the home base for some folks for time management purposes, and they're actually supporting inside schools full time. And so we would draw a distinction there for sure in those kinds of conversations. And you can cut someone from my staff right before we would cut some of those folks.
Yeah, but they're calculated in that. Ms. Byer?
So I want to thank you all for the detail and transparency that you've brought. And I want to also support the request to the county for raising all classified staff to at least 1922. And I also just want to be sitting with the meeting we had 2 days ago and the reality that our very progressive commissioners live in and our county manager lives in, where what they told us really plainly was they have 8 million total for all additional funding requests from all departments that report to the county, and they include us in that 8 million without raising taxes. I want to sit with the notion that we're struggling with HVACs and roofs that are failing across the district and buildings that our average age is 60 years old, and that we need a new bond run for Durham Public Schools, or at least some significant investment through LOBS funding in our facilities. And so I just want to be clear with folks, because I think it's important. We can ask. We can ask, and then if we don't receive, which is what's happened last year, this board and future boards will have to make really impossible decisions. And so I support the asking and the advocacy. But what I think it's going to mean is about a 4-cent property tax increase when we keep adding things in for folks that doesn't just affect property owners, but affects anyone that pays rent in Durham. That's essentially the only tool the county has. And so here we sit together. I think it's time to continue to do robust advocacy. And I've never wanted to ask the county or the city to hold their folks flat and not give them raises while our folks catch up. I've never wanted to do that. I'm glad they're lifting their folks up. But the state's not coming through for our employees, and we have about 3 times as many employees to lift up. I hope the city and the county might revive merger talks and see if there are ways that we can generate efficiencies as a community together through that. And I struggle with the tool that y'all have given us, because it's easy to say, cut central office 10%. It's easy to say that until you start asking the questions, like Ms. Rogers asked, about who those folks are who are working in support of students all throughout. And we can't cut HR and finance to their bare bones so they are not responsive. We are the 3rd largest employer in the community, and we've seen what that gets. I may be alone in this, but I want to share that I think the tech in our classrooms needs to be updated. It needs responsive, like, feedback from our staff, but it is 13 or 14 years old. It's breaking around folks, and they are trying to use it and not able to. For years, they've been not able to buy bulbs or find them. So, and I think what we struggle with is not having a robust plan now that that federal funding is gone that we've relied on so long for tech and other things. I attended the meet and confer where extra duty pay was started to be discussed. And while I think it's important and critical, I also felt like one thing we really need to work on first and foremost is making sure we're consistent across our schools with the way we're doing extra duty pay and communicating that out to folks. That's a serious way that we can improve, like today, because some schools, or there's just varying practices was what I heard there. I also, like, we sit with not wanting people to have unrealistic expectations about what this cycle is going to lead us to. And I appreciate you totaling out the master's pay and pulling those out, those additional supplements that this district invests in our folks. It totals over $4 million, and none of us are wanting to cut that. None of us are wanting to take that away. But those are things that actually the state should be doing to address critical needs, and hopefully with Governor Stein's budget, they will. I don't know how we help on some of the feedback, because what I really hope that you all will do is bring us recommendations that will have our feedback, but with the information that you have on the impact on students and where things are critical. And so I hope you take our feedback with a grain of salt and the freedom to say, here's how we're weighing these impossible things. And I think probably we make a big ask, and we also start saying, okay, what if we get half of that? Or what if we get 70% of it? Or what if we get 30% of it? Because I think we could be in any number of places, and it's important for us to be all along the way being honest and building trust with our staff. And there's not a single one of us that doesn't want to move all of our staff faster, up higher, and I hope the state does a budget for us. I don't know. I don't think I had questions so much as a rant in my typical fashion, but I look forward to kind of more feedback from staff on the best that we can do as we go forward. Thank y'all.
If y'all not ready to go, I can talk. Mr. Tab.
Thank you so very much. I just want to here again lift up in this public space that I support the 1922 to align us with what the county is paying their employees. And I also want to continue to lift up extra duty pay. As Board Member Chavez have said, we should not be at a point where we're not paying people for their service and the work that they're doing. I know this is kind of historically, as she said, been for women, but I was a man, and I know that extra duty was not given to me as well. So I just want to make sure that this is across the board for everyone. And just wanted to lift those two things up here again in this space. And thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you.
Ms. Umset, Chair Umset.
Thank y'all for the continued work on the budget ask. We have a lot to wrestle with, and this is just the beginning, I think. We have to actually vote on it in a couple weeks, and then once the county makes a decision, we got to do some more wrestling with what we do next. I did have a couple comments, maybe more than questions. I too feel like take my input on that spreadsheet with a grain of salt, because it was hard to know what the impacts would be on classrooms and on students, and which items do we need to be uplifting, because we know that's going to be the highest leverage points around how we're improving student learning. And I would like to see more information on that. I think I asked a little bit about that last time, of even in the items that are listed in our budget booklet, how do we make sure we're really clear about how that is improving learning in our schools? And so I really want to see some of that analysis and us being able to kind of wrestle through tough decisions based on using that at the forefront. I also would just a note on the budget booklet, so many schedules in here. If we can just make sure we put draft on the back of those, because this is all dependent on what happens on the county level, right? I am really concerned about the compression. I think I bring this up often. And we talk about recruitment, but retention is about keeping people. And when you have folks that are coming in who are making $1 or $2 off from folks who've been here for a while, I think we're going to see us continue to struggle with retention. And I know we can't fix it all in this this budget cycle, but I want us to keep that at the forefront, thinking about how we address that retention. The other thing I think I heard you talk about, Mr. Teeter, is some of the cost saving measures that we've already started to put in place. I would like to see that as a part of our presentation when we talk about the budget. I think when we go to present to the county about our budget, we need to also include that information in there. Here are the ways that we've already moved to be closer to state allotments. Here's the contracts that we've already reviewed. Here's the consistent practices that we're doing. I think it's important for that, and it might even be in the budget book. So it's really clear to the public that we are asking for more while we're also continuing to reevaluate how we're currently spending our funding. And I also heard from our county around in our joint meeting what we spend local dollars on. And I wonder if there are ways that we can continue to lift that up. Some of that is lifted in the budget booklet, but is there a way to even do a snapshot around local dollars fund these additional counselors at your school, right? Some of the different positions, the enhancements that you talked about, the specials teachers, like all of that is locally dollar funded. And we want to protect as much of that as possible as we continue to navigate this budget. As we talk about extra duty pay, I agree with Ms. Byer around how do we get consistent around how it's allocated currently. And we have the new salary administration policy that's supposed to help guide some of how that work is going. So I really would like to see how we have more consistency across the district. And some of the things that I also heard are about extra duty pay, and some of them are about just the conditions that folks are working in and expectations from supervisors. And so how do we address that part as well, which feels some of that might not be financial, some of that might be clarifying expectations, so that we're really clear about what we need to do on that end. Trying to make sure. I did want to ask around the safety assistance, transportation safety assistance. Do we have any data? I know we've put in supplements for other positions around bus drivers or exceptional children, ELL or ELL teachers. Do we have any data around if that's increased retention efforts or improved recruitment efforts?
Do any of my colleagues have any thoughts on that?
This is a work session. It can go on the follow-up items, but like actually has to be followed up on, right? Is there consensus that we want that information? Dr. Lewis, do you think that's feasible in timeline? Okay.
Yeah, we'll just have to have some conversations about it to ensure that is, directly aligned to that. So I chose to come to DPS or I chose to stay in DPS because of this supplement. Just had to kind of talk through how we would get that data.
And I don't know that we have, I'm not a researcher, so there's correlation and causation, right? But even if we look at retention rates from the last couple years to this year, is there any difference there? Is there any other kind of survey data that could help gather? But I think that's across, because we've done this now for multiple positions. So how do we look at that for multiple roles that we've implemented supplements for? I also would like to see, as we're talking about returns on our investments, like how are we doing that continuously, even if we do this investment with this budget cycle, so we're clear about as we're making investments, this is what the return is, this is what the impact on student learning is. So I don't know if you have anything else for that, Dr. Lewis.
No, like I said, we'll just have to see because, we can have increased retention rates, but I want to be able to specifically call out if it is because of it could be because they have fabulous principals or fabulous directors that they're staying. I just want to be clear, and it may just have to be a direct survey to them. We can have some conversations about how we will collect that data.
That's helpful. And then at the last meeting, I think I lifted up thinking about how do we increase enrollment. I know it was shared at the joint meeting, there might be an RFP coming out. I think about this as a multi-year endeavor, and increasing enrollment is not a one-year endeavor. So I'm wanting to know, is there any opportunity for that to be in this year's budget? Are you all thinking about that differently? In a multi-year budget ask that I will continue to to advocate for, we could be also planning for what does that look like in year 2, 3, and 4, 5.
I promise Exhibit B is going to be in the March 26th edition that reflects future trends. And so with the, right, so you heard correctly at the joint meeting, right? And we, through our relationship in the Council of Great, City Schools, and some other districts, right? We've heard about sort of these efforts, to retain firms that can support the outreach and augment the services that we already have. We have seen, and through that, right, we've seen some case studies in some other areas, and I think the blog that talks about South Durham News, right? So West Platte sort of picked up on what we were putting down the other day, and really enjoyed reading his insight, and illuminated some of those case studies we have heard about, right, in other states where it's been successful in returning students. And I think it's one of those items where we see the need to start that work very soon. And right. And so we would want to just go through a cycle of that. What impact does it have? How many students return? And then get some kind of gauge of what might we expect, right? And so and this is one of those things, right? So I almost never ever endorse use of fund balance, right? But this is one of those times where it's an appropriate, right? We're experimenting with this new thing, get a gauge of what it might cost, right? And we know that from what we've seen in our research, if there was a model where it's a fee per student returned, the dollars that follow that student are fivefold, if not more, the cost to get them back, right? And so it's that sort of that one, so that first round, we would want to kind of get a feel for it, and use our reserves and then that can inform, do we need to build in a recurring line item moving forward if we're pleased with that first round and get a gauge of what that looks like. Yeah.
Ms. Chavez?
I only wanted to just add a comment on the data around recruitment and retention of BC and ESL teachers who have received this supplement. Because I asked about that last year as well, and I know we were going to get that to the board last year, but I am just interested in the numbers of new hires maybe 3 years back, and then since we implemented the supplement, and then people who stayed for the following year. Something very simple, but I just want to see if those numbers have, what the compare and contrast, understanding that there are a variety of factors, but what do those numbers look like? And I would say 3 years back would probably do it.
Carter Otten?
Just wanted to quickly endorse something that Chair Umstead had said, and that was the making more public the cuts that are the works that's being done to demonstrate like where we're looking closely at cuts. It did seem in conversations both earlier this week and with the public, it seems like folks are not really aware of all that work that's being done. So that could be helpful. And I do think as we move forward, we have to think about not necessarily who we're cutting, but like, what are we doing that we don't have to do in a time when things are tight, when our critical mission is educating the students? What is the extra stuff? So thank you.
Thank you all for a robust conversation. Appreciate it. Y'all gonna stop letting me go at the end. I have a couple questions. I appreciate what everybody's uplifted, specifically around the failing businesses. Buildings that are falling around our students, around our personnel. All that is important. I'm struggling with the idea that I'm a DPS grad, came from an arts high school. We just did an arts proclamation, but the arts budget for supplies hasn't expanded for Durham Public Schools since pre-merger. That's problematic. It makes me wonder what else hasn't expanded since pre-merger. And how we're addressing those things and how those things are being elevated and lifted to the top. Well, they're not. How are they being overlooked? What can we do to ensure that the things that are being overlooked rise to our concern, right? And because these things haven't gone up, are we passing off those expenses to our families in terms of supplies for these classes? Because that would be a barrier in keeping them connected to the arts programs. And so we got to put our money where our mouth is. We talked all about arts a few minutes ago.
I have, so two things, right? I'd say one, I wanted to sort of revisit, right, an item that we funded last year, right? So we, $150,000 investment, right? So for a refresh. And so that's there, right? And I know we presented that last year, right, as a one-time non-recurring thing. Where we're sitting now, right, we feel comfortable with that being a recurring thing, where that's concerned, right? So we didn't pull on a one-time source to make it happen. We just built in the line item this year. And so I would imagine, right, just sort of based on the feedback, right, we've got some comfort level with that just being a recurring thing that we've added back to the arts budget, right, with that 150,000. And I would just say, where the funding level stands now in terms of those supplies, right, it is not because the appropriate people haven't advocated for it. So Les Turner has done a good job of making it known, and we were able to answer your questions around that because of Les Turner, and we borrowed some information that he shared with us to be able to answer that question. So there's that piece, and then there's another sort of related piece that has sort of vexed me since I got here, with the operating budgets that we disperse to schools. There's a formula for that. The 15% set aside history being a separate issue, I am not confident or convinced that Durham Public Schools has always adhered to that formula and made everything available to schools that the formula calls for. And so in my conversation, so it's been a few weeks ago now, maybe 2 weeks ago, we had a leadership meeting with principals. And that was something that I talked about with them, was our goal for this school year ahead is to finally honor the formulas that exist for funding supplies and other operating needs of the schools that had not been. And I'm right, and so I'm, and so just in that spirit, right, getting more resources in their hands, and whether, and in our process of doing that, you've got me thinking of, do we do that with some additional stipulation of, let's say, for example, if we've got a specific school that is going to get $5,000 more because of us adhering to that, do we say a certain percentage of this is for the arts versus your general operating, right? I mean, so there's some ways we can approach one problem that we're solving and also solve this other issue that you're lifting up in your feedback.
Thank you. I want to make sure I'm understanding that correctly, because it sounds like you're saying that some locations may have been withholding some of those funds, but like, if there could be instances that people are investing more in their arts programs,
I think that's
and you're
fair.
asking them to stop.
Well, so I think there's a couple things there, right? So one, there are some funds, right, allocated specifically for the arts. Um, we, and they have to use it that way, right? We don't let it move forward, between the budget and purchasing teams if they try to use money restricted for the arts for something other than the arts. And then two, it is very possible that we have, some schools that tap into other funds that we've allocated to them to augment the arts, right? And and so that's commendable, but also okay, that may be coming at the expense of something else. But different principals will prioritize their budgets in different ways. But I guess kind of what I was trying to convey is, from a budgeting perspective, I am not confident that Durham Public Schools has allocated everything that it intends for school supplies. And as we rectify that for this school year ahead, we may say, okay, a part of this has got to go towards the arts, right? We may allocate it in a way that we increase the component that's restricted for the arts and sort of address that issue at the same time. Yeah.
Thank you. I can appreciate that. It also sort of alludes to my other question Ms. Chavez asked about more conversation for extra duty pay. I too am in support of extra duty pay. And I'm hearing about the inconsistencies with the various supervisors across the district. But I have to be honest, I'm also having some concerns about the inconsistencies in finance, payroll, and HR around ensuring staff is paid on time, accurately, et cetera. And so to implement something in addition to that they need to be monitoring at this time feels like a challenge that we would be adding when we need to see consistency in those departments as well as consistencies in the policy, in the implementation of the salary administration policy.
Yeah, so I can speak right to the payroll piece. And so there was a past district, that I configured, payroll staff where there was a payroll technician that had some schools, but then was the sole sort of point for other things, right? That person was the touch point for stipends, um, longevity pay, other sort of ancillary payroll items, right? And so there was like a very clear kind of line of sight, and it was consistent, and we knew that Kelly is the person who keyed those. And so very happy to think about that with the payroll team of, is there a way for us to provide a clearer line of sight on special things like extra duty, and rather than it being dispersed and it being driven by which payroll zone are you in, right, for your compensation. So we've got some ways we can think about tightening up the payroll piece on that for sure.
Okay. I do appreciate you all changing the recommendation for classified pay increase and including the OT and PT assistance. I think that's important work going forward. I feel very strongly that we should make the ask of what we need and let other people say they know for themselves. I do fear what's going to happen when it comes back to the county, but we have to deal with that when we get to it. And if we ask for less than what we need, they're not going to be like, oh, here, have this extra money, because there is no extra money. So I appreciate this ask. Ms. Harold Goff?
Thank you. I'll be quick. I just wanted to again also say that I'm in favor of extra duty pay. And all of the things that all of my colleagues have already said about clear, like figuring out, what's going on with making sure that processes and people are being treated fairly. I'm rambling. I wanted to also make a quick comment about the conversation around the Bright Links and the technology, Bright Links, and the technology. Our educational professionals are exceptional, and we know that our students are brilliant, and with or without all of the resources. And how do I know this? Because they continue to achieve, they continue to do these wonderful things without all of the tools and resources that we would like for them to have. And, you know, in buildings that are not everything that they need. But I strongly believe that our educational environments, the environment you put a child in, really radically impacts the kind of educational experience that they have. And although they are brilliant and can achieve all of these things, we have to continue to keep that in the forefront. They can do it without, but we want them to have the best. And so, like Ms. Rogers was saying earlier, I would, you know, we make the ask, just acknowledging that this is what they truly need. And then when we make the ask, acknowledging that, and then when we don't get the resources that we need to, you know, then we make the harder decision. So I agree with that. They can be excellent without it, but I also, you know, of course, right sizing everything and making sure it aligns. I want to make sure that we don't think that it's less efficient to have lesser technology. We want our teachers to have all of the efficiency of education as well, all of the things that come with this technology. And I guess the last thing I would say to that is, I don't remember. So I think that's just it. But I want to lift that up. I don't want us to think that that's a light thing to say, you know, we're going to sacrifice that. That's something that also could impact teacher recruitment and retention. It impacts the work environment, having things that work well for you so that, you know, it keeps you from having to go home in the evening with extra things to do because you have extra resources to support how you're teaching and learning. So I don't know all the conversations around why, or, you know, educators are saying that they don't need these things. I think they're saying maybe it's a sacrifice, but I just want to reiterate that I do feel like we need to upgrade our technologies. And if the Bright Links, I'm curious about whether or not the Bright Links, like I say, I don't know if we can do it in this budget cycle, but in the next budget cycle, what are the technologies that are really going to support the curriculums that we're using and are going to enhance our scholars' learning environments? So no question, just wanted to lift that up as well. Thank you.
Ms. Chavez, it's gonna be our last comment because we are half hour over time. And Ms. Cooper is eager to talk to us, but go ahead.
All I wanted to say was I heard that 4 of us were for the extra duty pay. So can we reconsider that?
So, yeah, my for the extra duty pay is overtime. It's not for this next budget year.
Okay.
Sorry.
3.5. All right. We'll try again next year.
And I'll just also add for the extra duty pay, I think it's important for us to be crystal clear on that. And I think we need additional time with that because per your policy 7502, extra duty can come in the form of compensation. And so what I don't want is for buildings, departments, and it can come in a calculated rate of pay too. So what I don't want is for some buildings and or departments to only do comp time, and then there are some buildings and other departments that are doing a calculated rate of pay. So I just want us to have some additional time to really iron that out.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. Thank you, Mr. Teeter. If everybody's okay, we're gonna move to the next item on the agenda. It's a priority for update. Ms. Cooper.
Good evening, Chair Umstead, Vice Chair Rogers, board members, Superintendent Lewis, and DPS community. Tonight, I am pleased to provide an update on Priority 4, cultivate meaningful and authentic community engagement, and the work being done across Durham Public Schools to engage our families and community. This work is about building trust, increasing clarity, and creating systems that make engagement consistent, accessible, and culturally responsive across the district. Next slide, please. Our strategic plan is our blueprint. It keeps us aligned and focused on what matters most, outcomes for students. Priority 4 directly supports every other priority. When communication is clear, partnerships are strong, and families feel connected, student outcomes improve. Priority 4 supports those outcomes from enrollment through graduation. Next slide, please. Before moving forward, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the team behind this work. Priority 4 is not owned by one department. It is truly cross-functional. What makes this progress possible is the willingness of departments to move beyond silos, to share data, align processes, and co-create solutions that serve schools and families more effectively. Those who are present today, please stand to be recognized. This cross-department alignment is one of the strongest indicators that this work is sustainable, and it reflects a shared belief that meaningful engagement requires coordination, clarity, and accountability across the entire organization. Next slide, please. Family and community engagement is not an initiative or end goal. It is a shared responsibility and a foundational driver of student success. Our work is anchored in Dr. Karen Mapp's definition of engagement as a full, equal, and equitable partnership among families, educators, and community partners to support student learning from birth through college. Our work under Priority 4 is grounded in this belief. We are building systems that make engagement intentional, culturally responsive, and measurable, ensuring every family, regardless of background or language, has meaningful access and voice. Next slide, please. Each strategy addresses a different but interconnected dimension of engagement: customer service, communication, ambassadorship, branding, language support, engaging families, professional learning, and community partners. As we walk through each strategy, I will share examples of what we are doing today, what is working, where gaps remain, and the next steps needed to move toward greater impact. Next slide, please. Our first strategy is customer service. Our goal is to develop standard operating procedures and processes to create a culture of hospitality and excellent service across DPS, fostering a sense of belonging and cordial experiences for employees and families that support the work we do for our students. We launched professional development to strengthen hospitality practices for central services leaders, which helped shift the focus from transactional service to relationship-driven service. This important learning provided hands-on experience for leadership, unpacking gaps in culture and service and setting expectations for ourselves and each other, defining how we wish to move forward as a team. Dr. Lewis conducted a survey of our school leaders and central service members that provided necessary feedback regarding central services' relationship with departments and schools. This provided a baseline for how departments are currently perceived in terms of service and responsiveness, giving us data to identify strengths and areas where additional support is needed. The feedback was a launching point for creating the culture we desire in DPS, and we are seeing improvement in responsiveness, particularly within central service departments. Because of this, there is greater awareness of service expectations. As we grow in our commitment to service, we know that consistency across schools and departments is necessary. Families should experience the same level of service regardless of where they engage, because every interaction is a reflection of the district. Moving forward, we will also establish clear service expectations, define accountability measures, expand professional learning, and strengthen feedback systems so we can measure progress, because this is culture work, and culture work requires reinforcement and time. Next slide, please. Communication is how we stay connected with our families, our staff, and our community. It's not just about sending messages. Our goal is to share clear, timely information in ways that are easy to access and easy to understand. DPS uses multiple communication platforms and vehicles to ensure that employees and communities remain informed about the district, like the weekly Spark Insider newsletter, the weekly Spark newsletter, the Spark Insider magazine, and our social media updates for families and all stakeholders, to even more tailored communication for employees like our new DPS Connects employee newsletter, Spark mails, and DPS alerts. Through these channels, we have standardized how we share information with our community. Additionally, last year we overhauled our digital presence with the creation of a one-stop shop for all things DPS, including a new website, district app, and two-way communication platform. Via previous engagement surveys, our families requested simplifying how they connect with the district, and we had an opportunity to centralize how we engage them. Numbers indicate in our first year of implementation for the website, app, and rooms that 76% of our families have at least one guardian with the app and rooms access, and 76% of our staff members have active accounts. We also know that monthly usage for families and staff is just below 60%. We are receiving feedback from our educators and families regarding their experiences and concerns with rooms and are actively monitoring engagement rates. This data will allow us to better understand the areas for improvement and opportunity, especially how it relates to how seamlessly families can connect with their schools and teachers. As a next step, a full evaluation and assessment of our systems will allow us to improve upon what is already in place and make the necessary adjustments for enhanced information sharing and engagement. Next slide, please. There is authentic interest in representing DPS. Families, students, and staff want to share their stories and champion our district. That's why platforms were established to inform and empower. Through the Parent Ambassador Program, selected parents and caregivers serve as trusted connectors between the district, schools, and families. They do more than just volunteer at events. They share critical information through their networks, offer parent perspective on district programs and events, and serve as the ultimate cheerleaders for DPS, willingly sharing their experiences with other families. We have a core group of 25 across all grade bands and will open the application in the fall for new ambassadors. The Spark Academy, which stands for Supporting Parents and Advocates Through Resources and Knowledge, is a new community certification program launched in January 2026. It is designed to empower parents, caregivers, and advocates with the knowledge and tools to better support Durham students and champion our public schools. Through this interactive learning experience, participants explored how DPS operates, from classrooms to administrative offices, and discover how families and community members can partner with schools to help every student thrive. Additionally, Dr. Lewis's councils provide a structured leadership pathway for authentic voice, advocacy, and partnership with students, staff, and school administrators, and we had a lovely example of that this evening with Mr. Hester. However, ambassadorship must move from symbolic to strategic, and our work with our ambassador groups continues to evolve. Next steps include consistent training and resource materials, as well as defined responsibilities, guardrails, and success indicators aligned to strategic priorities and advocacy efforts. Next slide, please. Brand is experience, and every interaction shapes it. That's why we have been intentional in how we tell our story and present our district to the community. I have the honor of working along the extremely talented and award-winning team in the Office of Public Affairs, where our work is to ensure that students, families, and staff, as well as the broader community, understand the district's direction, decisions, and impact. We've actualized this through several initiatives like our Higher Ground series, which highlights academic achievements at DPS schools. It's realized on social media through campaigns like Scholars Securing Dollars, which reinforce DPS as a district that delivers opportunity, preparedness, and measurable success for its students. It's delivered to rising kindergarten students when they receive a backpack of materials to prepare them for the upcoming school year at DPS. Progress is evident in how we have refined visual identity, sharpened the message, and increased visibility. We recognize that inconsistencies still exist in that messaging and experience at both the district and school levels. That's why the next phase of our work is focused on ensuring coherence between school and district messaging, strengthening consistency in outward-facing materials, and deepening stakeholder input to guide future outreach efforts. Every student, employee, parent, community partner, and supporter is a DPS brand ambassador. Ultimately, our goal is to move beyond simply promoting a brand to cultivating a shared understanding of who we are, so that our values are reflected not only in what we say, but in what families and community members consistently experience. Next slide, please. Language access is fundamental to authentic engagement. When families can fully understand, navigate, and participate in their child's education in the language they are most comfortable using, trust deepens and partnership becomes possible. The Multilingual Resource Center serves as the hub for providing comprehensive language access services to schools and families. Our efforts for ensuring support to schools include implementing processes for requesting interpretation and translation services, and ongoing bidirectional communication to support families. This school year, the Multilingual Resource Center has received 620 requests for Spanish language interpretation for meetings involving pre-K students, 2,201 requests for Spanish language interpretation for meetings involving students with IEPs, 55 requests for Spanish language interpretation for open house events, 229 requests for after-hours Spanish language interpretation, and 487 requests for interpretation in languages other than Spanish, including American Sign Language. In partnership with the Office of Federal Programs and Community Engagement, we have also increased our translation and interpretation capacity within the Office of Public Affairs, as we now have a communication specialist who dedicates a portion of her time to supporting bilingual communication. With the increase for language support services for both Spanish and other languages, we recognize the need for all schools to have consistent language support. That's why next steps are to evaluate how we support interpretation and translation for languages other than Spanish to ensure services remain responsive to the needs of our families. Next slide, please. Our engaging family strategy is laser focused on strengthening the partnerships between schools and families. Over the past year, we have created structured opportunities for families to provide input, expanded learning sessions designed to empower caregivers, and reinforce district-level collaboration to ensure engagement efforts are aligned. Feedback from stakeholders has increased across the district this year. Since launching the Thought Exchange online survey and engagement platform in 2025, we have conducted 21 engagements with over 11,000 participants sharing more than 4,000 thoughts and 76,000 ratings. We've received feedback on budget priorities, school safety, district policies, and more, elevating families from participants to true partners in decision-making. Our Family Academy continues to build the confidence and capacity of our families as they support their students' educational journeys. Topic-based workshops hosted at schools are designed to give families practical tools they can use immediately. The catalog includes sessions on supporting academics at home, digital literacy, communication strategies, and more. We aim to create spaces and platforms where every family's voice is represented. We acknowledge that gaps still remain with engagement among underrepresented families, as well as centering families as co-creators in engagement planning. Additionally, closing feedback loops effectively should not just reside in emails and reports, but should be exhibited through action and service deliverables. This is where our opportunities lie. As we look to the spring, we will launch the annual Family Engagement Survey, which was expanded from only Title I schools and families to all families across the district, and we are planning for trainings for school-based staff. Our DPS Family Orientation is also a new initiative that's launching this spring for our families new to DPS. The event is being facilitated by a coalition of DPS departments, including federal programs, the Office of Public Affairs, ESL, Transportation, Student Support Services, the MRC, Exceptional Children's Department, and Early Education. The orientation will provide families with information, connections, and resources to successfully support their students in DPS from day one. Next slide, please. Across school districts, professional learning tied to community engagement has become a strategic lever for strengthening partnerships, improving family experience, and building two-way trust. We are currently offering evidence-based training on effective family and community engagement, strengthening the capacity of our schools and educators with research-informed tools and strategies. Professional learning drives organizational sustainability. That's why our next steps are focused on deepening the understanding and tailoring learning opportunities to the unique responsibilities of different staff members, ensuring that administrators, teachers, and support staff receive targeted guidance that aligns with their roles. We will also introduce a new series of learning opportunities for both new and experienced staff, along with a clear framework to guide consistent, high-quality engagement practices across all schools, ensuring a cohesive and sustainable approach district-wide. Next slide, please. In Durham Public Schools, we are truly fortunate to have a variety of businesses and organizations who partner with our schools to provide support and resources that benefit our students and strengthen our school communities. Many of these partnerships exist informally. Through the collaborative efforts of the Office of Special Programs and the Office of Federal Programs and Community Engagement, we have formalized how we define, track, and evaluate partnerships and external collaborations. The Community Partnership Engagement Portal was developed to simplify how organizations connect with the district and create a more efficient review pathway for formalized partnership and to document partnerships to monitor their effectiveness. Currently, 24 schools have formalized partnerships. Again, I want to note our schools have community partners. We do have to funnel more through this partnership process to have them formalized for review and approval. Our opportunity, again, is formal alignment and measurable impact. Increasing awareness of the partnership application and process is critical. Moving forward, our focus is to strengthen partnership engagement with the district and schools, ensuring consistent compliance with established expectations, and expanding high-quality collaborations, particularly in areas where schools lack formalized partnerships. Most importantly, we are prioritizing alignment so that every partnership directly advances our strategic goals and student outcomes. Next slide, please. The next two slides show that many Priority 4 strategies are currently at level 3 or 4 with solid foundations in place. However, we are not yet at the level of consistency and impact to meet the strategic plan's 2028 goals. Our next step is overlaying these ratings with district and school level readiness to determine where targeted support is needed, moving us from active tracking to performance monitoring. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. This slide provides a snapshot of our progress across the Priority 4 goals. Just for your edification, Goal 4A says by 2025, DPS will assess school and district processes to establish standards for enhancing consistent, understandable, accessible, and culturally responsive messaging for internal and external stakeholders. Goal 4B, by spring 2024, DPS will develop and implement tools to listen to and determine family needs. By 2025, DPS will use these findings to support schools in designing effective, meaningful family engagement programming. And by 2026, 100% of schools will implement and evaluate such programming. And Goal 4C, by spring 2024, DPS will design and implement a robust process for identifying, connecting with, approving, and onboarding community organizations as partners. Then by 2027, all schools will have one or more high-impact community partnership that supports increasing positive student outcomes. Overall, the work remains in process and on track for 25-26 school year. Together, these efforts reflect steady progress toward building stronger relationships with families, partners, and the broader community. I want to note that for Priority 4B, 100% of our Title I schools currently meet this goal, as federal programs has provided a tool that can be used to determine family needs to design effective, meaningful engagement opportunities. Moving forward, this template will be leveraged with all schools as we support them with year-long engagement planning. Next slide, please. At this time, the team and I welcome any questions and discussion.
Thank you, Ms. Cooper and team. Colleagues? Ms. Harold Goff?
I just want to say that I feel that priority 4 is probably, for me, one of the most important priorities in our strategic plan. I really appreciate that we even have it in the strategic plan, that it's, and how important it is. And still, so many of our stakeholders feel such a great disconnect in how we engage in community. So, I look forward to digesting all of the work that's being done. And I think part of the disconnect is just being able to communicate that to our most marginalized, most disadvantaged communities that often feel invisible within our school district. It's very, very, very hard work. So this is one that I look forward to following very closely and learning more about. And I'm very passionate about, so I'm saying that publicly. I've been looking for opportunities to connect with you further because community engagement and specifically the equitable community engagement, especially for populations that feel so disengaged from our schools, is very important to me. And thank you so much for this work.
Anybody else, colleagues? Mr. Tab?
I just wanted to just say thank you for the work. Community engagement is very important to me as well. And just to see how it's all laid out and how it's all coming together. And thank you for uplifting what needs to be improved, because that means that you are, have a path forward in making our district even better. So thank you for that.
Chair Umstead?
Thank you, Ms. Cooper and your team for this presentation. Do want to uplift a little bit about rooms. I know you have some information about it in your presentation, and wanted to kind of hear about next steps regarding getting more families enrolled with, I don't know if enrolled is the right word, but connected with the app. I know there was some concern when we boarded it about a year ago. So I wanted to hear more about what you all are seeing this working and what next steps might be.
Absolutely. We know that there is opportunity that still remains. I will note that the functionality of this platform is different from other platforms that were used by various schools across the district previously. And when you're in the first year of implementing anything new, that change can be challenging, but we are committed to working with our families to ensure that they have access and understand how the platform works. We've had webinars that we've hosted for families. We've had trainings that have been hosted for staff. One of the wonderful things about this company is the 24-hour support that is really available to anyone across Durham Public Schools. All of our employees can send a message to get direct support on the items that they need to help troubleshoot. We also have a representative who is located right here in Durham who provides us with strategies and techniques and works one-on-one with our school leaders as well to provide them support. We know that there are still opportunity to grow and enhance. That's why we're taking that feedback in real time, having conversations with the organization so we can look at making those changes as soon as possible to support that family engagement.
Ms. Byer, do you want to talk?
I think so. I think it's rooms, but I'm actually, my kids have graduated, so I don't have the DPS tech these days. Is this the thing that they wanted talking points last year or something else? Is this the?
That is correct. And I do want to make sure that we clarify that there is Talking Points is a platform that was used for two-way communication with families. Our issue with Durham Public Schools is we did not have a singular platform that was used across the district. We had schools using multiple platforms, and so there was inconsistency amongst families around how they were receiving information. Our opportunity to transition to this one-stop shop was to centralize all of their communication, what they were getting from the schools and the district in one location.
And not to mention, many of these apps we had no control over in terms of monitoring from a safety standpoint.
So, but when families are, or when educators are saying they can't actually get a text to a phone, is that still a capability that rooms can do? We just haven't trained folks how to do? I'm still hearing complaints of some actual, they can't, people have to log into an app or something rather than actually get a push text. Is that?
So families are notified via text if there is a message that has been received via the app. Due to the safety precautions that are in place that surround communication back and forth, all communication does reside within the app. But if you get a notification from a teacher, you should receive a notification that says you have a message from this person, XYZ educator, and then you can go and check the message. You do not have to be logged into the app to check the message. You can click the link and then it automatically pops up in your web browser.
You do have to have the app.
Having the app, so
You do have to have logged in, set up a user and username and logged into the app.
at least one time. Once you are logged in, you stay logged in and it stays with your child until they graduate.
So I got a text message yesterday and it has a link. And when I clicked the link, it populated in Safari because that's my default browser on my phone. And I could read what the message was. And it's a static message, but I couldn't respond to it.
So the two-way communication, responding back and forth with your teacher or other personnel at your schools does reside in the app.
And if families need support with that, who is it that they should contact?
They most certainly can contact their schools and their schools can contact us. We are always available to support and we have done so. Our office has visited schools, set up tables at events to walk families through this process. We have online learnings and directions that have been shared for families in multiple languages so they can access, as well as videos to show them how to navigate.
Ms. Carter Oden.
Thanks so much for this presentation. I can vouch for what you've explained in rooms. That is how it works. I get the text message and then I just go to the app to read it and I go to different rooms to look at different things for each of my different kids. So smooth if you have the app or maybe the web browser. I'm not sure what happens if you don't have it. So I think I'd love to see us getting more to a place. I know that at our school, at my kids' elementary school, they worked long and hard to get folks on Dojo and then felt frustrated, which was like talking points, and then felt frustrated when they had to like go get people on rooms. And so I think it'll just be, as you alluded to, time and lots of work to get families that don't naturally get connected to things more connected. What I was going to, a couple things I was going to say though was, one, I tend to, because there's so much communication all the time when you've got different kids, I really pay attention to what's coming from my kid's school. Even as a district person, I'm much quicker to look at that than anything coming from the district. And so I'm wondering, and can you tell us more about what partnerships you have with schools to help them enhance the way they're communicating with their families? Since that is, I think, what many families are doing is they might not see the posts coming from the district, unfortunately, because they're usually beautiful, but they're seeing what's coming from the families, which I think are variable, coming from the schools, which are variable.
Absolutely. We work very closely with our friends in curriculum instruction and Dr. King's office to make sure that critical messages that need to be shared district-wide are facilitated and funneled through our communications platforms and channels to communicate directly with school administrators. We understand that greater improvement needs to occur in this area because we know that families look to their schools first for what information is coming out. I think there's an opportunity to streamline the critical messaging that comes from the district, how we convey that to our schools, and how they can then disseminate that to their families. Oftentimes, when there are big initiatives and high-level communication, there is a toolkit that is created that includes all of the messaging that is shared in multiple languages that our principals can then share out. We're open to the dialogue and communication about how we can improve on that process to ensure that they're getting what they need to share with their families more effectively and efficiently.
Thank you. I was thinking too about the sharing your expertise with how to communicate, not just how do you get your materials to them, but like helping schools who might struggle getting with ways to communicate with their families, you all supporting them in different ways too.
Absolutely. We host professional learning for our staff at the different schools. One of the things that we have implemented this year is a marketing roundtable, which once a month we invite our school leaders, and it could be a principal or someone that the principal designates, and we talk about various communication and marketing strategies that they can deploy within their school communities around district-wide events or hyper-focused school events. So we have created greater capacity in increasing their learning, and we look forward to partnering on more opportunities moving forward to help in that area as well.
That's great to hear. Thank you. And then my only other question slash comment is about language access. We've received a couple of meaty pieces of communication today around language justice and access. One coming from a school that I think really probably speaks to what's happening at other schools, which is that we might have interpretation in place in the district or translation, but it takes so long to get those services sometimes that it's not supporting the needs of families the way it needs to. And so I'm curious to know, in what ways are we looking at, and this might not be something you can answer right now, and that's totally fine, but I'm just, in what ways are we looking at that regularly to make sure that the turnaround time too, when a family needs to speak to someone else about their student, they can actually do that as quickly as possible? Or if a school needs materials translated and thinking about not only Spanish, but other languages as well.
Absolutely. I'm actually going to invite Mr. Friedman to the podium to share some insight.
Get my numbers here. Good evening. To answer your question, so earlier Ms. Cooper shared some numbers. So just looking, for example, Spanish language students with IEPs. So far this year, we've had 2,200 requests. 2,201 requests just for Spanish language interpretation, just for IEPs. If that current trend continues into the fourth quarter, since we started measuring this day in the pandemic, it's going to be our highest number of requests we've received all year. We'll probably land around 2,900. I'm sorry, since we started tracking this data since the pandemic. March is also head count. So if you email or request services from a Spanish language interpreter who covers IEPs, chances are they're probably pretty booked up this month, right? So part of the process also involves like, hey, if you have a really time-sensitive request, let myself or the coordinator know, so then we can reassign it to somebody else who has more availability. So part of it is like the reality is we have limited resources, limited number of interpreters, and so we're constantly figuring out what is their availability, what requests are on the table, and making sure we follow up with them. On languages other than Spanish, I think the presentation, next steps, I think we have an opportunity here to really reassess what does that look like. The reality is that workflow isn't assigned to one staff member, it's shared among multiple staff members as part of their other responsibilities, right? And so this year, for example, we've done 487 requests in that language. And so it's also triaging. And I'll give you an example from today. A principal pinged me directly today, mid-afternoon, is like, hey, I have a real emergency. Can we get this blank interpreter on the phone? Okay. 2 minutes, called the principal, we landed that plane. They didn't put in a request, they just asked, and that's how we landed that. So it all comes down to communication, the availability, and what workflow it falls into and reassigning it. The reality is we don't have one interpreter to one school. They have multiple other assignments, and they're constantly balancing the different tickets to figure out which is a higher priority, where's their availability, and if not, does it get assigned to someone else?
That's super helpful. Thank you. And I'm wondering a couple things.
Yeah.
Like, are y'all tracking response time? And I'm asking that because it sounds like in the future, as we're thinking about budget, and we're thinking about the growing needs of our, that we may have more non-English speaking families in our district moving forward, maybe you're going to need more resources for your department to be able to meet the needs, right? And so I'm wondering if we can get some data moving forward on like, okay, how long are folks having to wait sometimes? Then that could be an indication that you need more. Or is there other data points
Yeah,
that you could?
I mean, we're happy to track it. I just really want to be transparent in some of this data. I'll give you an example, right? Like we recently had a request for an American Sign Language interpreter 2 or 3 months out, right? And I said, hey, we've got it. We're not going to follow up with you till April because it's not till May, right? So I'm happy to give you the response to, but it also varies because some people put their tickets in like 2 and 3 and 4 months in advance, but we'll be transparent as we can.
That makes sense. That maybe is not the best metric.
I just want to respond. If you want this type of data, we can figure it out and get it.
also, do you all use or do you use a language line? Or are there times that you've used a language line, or what are your thoughts on that?
So Language Line it's a brand. It's a service that one particular company utilizes, and they have a lot of government contracts. They're a preferred vendor from the state. They have like a state contract. When the MRC was first created, we had a contract with Language Line, primarily for two components. I wasn't happy from a service delivery point for their support for over the phone interpretation, particularly in Arabic. And it's our second highest, it's our next highest after Spanish. There were a lot of call drops. And so I went with a more higher quality vendor. We did a little search, I did a search. I actually called my counterpart at the time at Wake County Schools, and he was the one that recommended it to me, and I did some follow through. And then we switched a number of years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, to a new vendor, and we've been using them ever since. They're a very high quality vendor. They actually have an office here in RTP. But we use a different vendor. It's informally in this work called OPI, over the phone interpretation.
That sounds awesome. Thanks so much. Appreciate all of your work.
Ms. Umstead?
I think this is really important, that some of the language justice things that we uplifted here. And I also want us to think about how we're building capacity across the district too for language justice. You know, is there extra duty pay or additional stipends that people get trained through your office to do some emergent work that might be at a school, right? Like there are some ways to think about how do we build capacity that will require, I think, some funding ask, but how do we do both and think about what expansion might look like and build capacity across the district? We've got toolkits going out, right? What are the other ways that we're thinking about helping build that capacity at the school level?
Ms. Byer?
Yeah, and just as a follow-up, I think it might be helpful just to know baseline how many interpreters we have and maybe a student count, right? From and some trends there. Have we made any progress in adding capacity there? And I wonder, and this is, I had not heard the the issues that were brought to public comment before. That was my first time hearing those concerns that were addressed. So I look forward to ways that we can continue to improve and address concerns. And maybe this is for you, Ms. Cooper. I feel like since the classified pay thing, a lot of the messaging out and about within the community has been heavy often, has a bit of negativity, I'll say. And I just hope that your team might have ideas about continuing to uplift people's story of goodness, of why they choose DPS, and not just as a parent or a family, as a student, but as an employer. Like, I would love some help from our folks who are the most amazing employees in the world to continue to tell their stories. And to me, building that trust of why our adults are the most amazing educators and the most amazing caregivers is what will help rebuild trust as people entrust us with their children. And so I've seen y'all do that some. I just think maybe in this time of the world being so negative and such a hard place for students, I think there's always more that we can do. So I hope if y'all have creative ideas, because y'all are the experts, that you'll help us kind of lift up folks. It's like joy in the morning, right? Yeah, bring joy to DPS.
Absolutely. If I could respond to that, we actually have a campaign that's in the works that will be launching soon that very clearly states, I chose DPS. And so this will include students, families, staff, community partners, and we are working on developing that and rolling that out in the very, very near future.
Okay, close us out, Ms. Hirakoff.
Oh, I was just wanting to piggyback off of that. Very excited to hear that. Does this campaign include like a social media campaign and a print campaign?
And so I will say, at this point in time, it is a social media campaign. As we've already had lots of conversation about the budget, you all are probably aware that marketing, advertising, and other communications platforms to help us further that message and share it with a wider audience there are costs associated with that. I believe back at the budget town hall, Mr. Teeter mentioned that there were about $250,000 for marketing. I want to be clear that that marketing dollar does not reside in our office. We are working with very limited dollars, and we do so rather, I think, very successfully in leveraging and being as smart and nimble as we can to amplify that message through those dollars. But it does take a commitment with financial resource to ensure that we have the type of campaign and messaging that we would like to reach the audiences that we need it to.
Would love to see that. Would love to see billboards and all that good stuff.
And we
know it
want
costs
to
money.
do it.
Are we also like, I mean, talking about our brilliant youth? Dr. Lewis, the superintendent student advisory team, is there anyone who has any, social media savvy? Is there a way that we can turn this into some sort of grassroots campaign where all of our families are sharing these messages on their social media? That could save us some money. If there's a way to work into the campaign how we involve our youth, their families, our teachers, this is what you share, and we just send it out that way. That could save us some money. And also, can we also in that campaign include our free billboards at all of our schools, our marquees, our signs in all of our schools, and maybe have some messaging that we're calendaring to put out? Because that's, again, those are resources that we don't have to pay for, that we can activate, and we have the advantage because we're all over the city, so.
Absolutely. I will tell you that is one of the next steps for our ambassadors, and making sure that they have that messaging and the resource in their back pocket so they can share at the drop of a dime all the wonderful things that are happening in and around Durham Public Schools as it relates to their school specifically, or to the district as a whole. And as you mentioned, utilizing some of our students and their voice and their skill and their expertise, we launched a program this year called Pixel and Pen. We have a group of students, of high school students from across Durham Public Schools that are content creators through the Office of Public Affairs. We have published their work. They've been at district events. They're taking photos. They're writing stories. They're designing things. We are already doing that work, and we're excited about what they've already done and how they are bringing their skills to the table to help tell the DPS story.
Okay, I'm looking forward to us sending out messaging on how we can share those stories. Like when the district is making those and when the students are doing that, what then, or how then are we letting families know, we need you to share this? We're trying to do, just like you would do with any other major social media campaign, we have to get everyone on board. Like, that's part of the campaign, is to get other people to share those messages on their personal pages.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Ms. Cooper.
Thank you.
Y'all come back and see us again.
Can we not leave yet?
Okay.
Ms. Cooper did mention the award winning, but I also want to acknowledge publicly what you were talking about. And many may know that this year, 2025, at the NC-SPRA, conference,
It's the annual Blue Ribbon Awards.
our team, OPA team, walked away with 9 gold awards, 4 silver awards, 2 bronze awards, and the best of the best in North Carolina for digital media engagement for DPS, our Did You Know social media campaign. So they walked away with 16
total.
awards. So I would like to congratulate and thank you all so much for the work and the team.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Colleagues, the next items on our agenda are for information only: the overnight field trip, grants, gifts, and donations. And then we have the summary of follow-up items.
So for our follow-up items on the policy, we've jotted down the work for the policy committee follow-up. As far as the budget, there were a couple of items: the administrative scales, posting them in similar format as what is in the budget notebook to what is on our website. Lifting up how local funds are used to support additional positions in Durham Public Schools, such as counselors and specials. There was a suggestion to share more clearly where we are making cuts and what we're doing. And are we considering stopping what we necessarily might not have to be doing? Is there any data on whether the ESL and EC supplements and perhaps other supplements have impacted recruitment and retention. And I was unclear on, as far as the follow-up around the turnaround time for language support in addition to the number of translation requests, but that was lifted and I jotted it down in case. That's all I have.
Thank you. Colleagues, did you have anything to add? The one I would say is the salary schedule should have draft behind them.
Sorry, should have
Draft.
draft. Thank you. Salary schedule should have draft. I know. I'll add that in. Thank you.
You had something else, Chair said.
Did I miss something?
Yeah, and I think this might be pending what Mr. Teeter and team does with those board spreadsheets, but more information around the yes or no options in that sheet and what the impact would be kind of on schools and students and learning that piece. If we're not using those spreadsheets anymore, then it might be different. But if we're going to continue to wrestle with those spreadsheets, I think more information would be helpful.
Thank you. We're coming to a close, but before we do that, we want to congratulate the Southern Spartans girls and boys basketball teams, varsity basketball team. They are headed to the state championship. We hope the community will go out and join them on Saturday in Winston-Salem. The details can be found on our social media under the Did You Know section. We appreciate that, Ms. Cooper. Congratulations, and let's support our students in every scope of this work. We will not be streaming and coming back live online and have interpretation services at that point. After we go into closed session, we wish you all a good night. We thank everybody for joining us today. Colleagues, I'd entertain a motion going to close.
Move we go into closed session based on the items on the agenda.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Harold Goff, seconded by Ms. Byer to go into closed session for that reason stated on the agenda. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, use the same sign. It passes unanimously. We're now in closed session.